This is a meeting of the Novato Unified School District Board of Trustees for April 2nd. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. A few logistics. Trustee Mack is not here this evening. He's traveling, and Superintendent Hogeboom is out this evening as well. He is out ill, and so we have our acting superintendent, Chris Koska. So he'll be filling in. All right. So the board did meet in closed session this evening, and Trustee Aguila will announce those items.
Okay. So the board met at closed session, and we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, conference with legal counsel, pending litigation, Coalition to Save San Marin versus Novato Unified School District, Marin County Superior Court case number CIV 1702295, and that was information only. Second item that we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiations, Chris Koska, Deputy Superintendent, Human Resources and Strategic Development, Employees Organization, California School Employees Association, CSCA, layoff, and we talked, and that was information only. And the third item discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, insurance claim 5660605. The claim was rejected. That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of our agenda this evening. It stands as is. There's no changes. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell to approve our agenda this evening. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. 6-0, 1 absent. And then if the public here in the boardroom here, if anybody would like to speak to an item on the agenda or not on the agenda, please fill out one of these blue cards. They're in the back of the room on a table. You bring it up to Sally right here, and we'll put you into where you belong so you're able to speak to the item or not on an item on the agenda or not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. The timer is right there, and please stick with the 3 minutes. Otherwise, we'll cut you off. No, just please stick to 3 minutes. The timer will buzz when it's done. Okay. Approval of our consent agenda. Before we do that, I would like to pull items K, L, and M. We're going to bring those after we do some discussion action items. It's just the way it's all falling that we want to do those after the discussion action. Okay?
Item 15F, the IT contract, I'd like to pull it, and if we can discuss it so our IT team can leave right after we do the consent agenda with your permission.
Okay, that sounds fine. We have F, okay. Trustee Gasson?
So he said F or S?
He said F.
F. Okay, so I'm pulling 15S for Colby Technologies.
Okay. All right, so we have our consent agenda pooling items 15F, K, L, M, and S.
I will move passage of the consent agenda, excluding item F, K, L, M, and S.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have first by Trustee Nell, a second by Trustee Cooper. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. Okay, and then sticking with Trustee Miller, we want to get to item, typically we don't do it this way, but since we're in a little bit of a time constraint with staff, 15F, let's take action or move that one right now.
Madam President, item 15F is the authorization to bid for IT infrastructure upgrades at Novato High School and San Marin High School. And it's an estimated cost of $3,861,000. And I've been working with watching the staff do their work and move forward on this. And they have, there's been some opportunities for cost savings and some opportunities to rethinking. And I wanted to commend the staff led by Tim Rocco and Yancey Calkins in terms of the kind of work they've been able to do to bring together a program that will save this district money and deliver a quality product. And I know they were at it hard all day, making sure that every T was crossed and every I was dotted. I'd like to commend them and move this item 15F for adoption by this board.
I just got a blue card from Jana Morbitz. Where did I? Oh yeah, sorry. Do you want to speak with? Is it on this particular item? You're saying technology. Okay, so I'm going to put you on a non-agenda public comment. That's what I put it on, right? Oh, you did. Sorry, I'm not. I'm just looking at the word technology, so I apologize. Thank you. Okay, so you're moving that item. Okay, thank you. And we need a second. Second by Trustee Nell. So this is item 15F. I have a first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent.
And thank you to staff.
Yeah. Thanks, Ross, for
doing
that.
Just lots of hard work.
All right. Got lots going on here. All right, our student presentation this evening is Marin Oaks. Hessa?
Ain't no pressure, y'all. Just take a deep breath.
You're so funny. Okay, hi. Good evening. Thank you for having us. So tonight I have Miss Cunny, our Bridges coordinator, and some students that are going to talk to you about our Bridges program. We're in year 3, and we also have one graduate who's going to talk about how the program helped her and find her success. Okay.
Hi, I'm Francine Cunny. I'm the coordinator at Bridges. I'm not going to say too much except that I want the kids to share all the fabulous programs and classes they've been taking this year. So with no further ado, I'll introduce our first student, Alejandra.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Martinez, and I'm doing an internship at Linwood Elementary. I go every Friday from 8:30 to 12:30. I work with children around the ages 3 to 4 that have autism spectrum disorder. I help them with creative and imaginative play. They have a pretend shop where they pretend to sell ice cream. This has been a great experience for me. It has made me think about working with young children in the future. In conclusion, I will be attending Santa Rosa Junior College and majoring in psychology. Bridges has helped me with financial aid, scholarships, college application, exploring what I want to study, building my resume, and public speaking. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Caesar. I'm part of the Bridges program as well. Today I'm going to be talking about STOP, and what STOP stands for, Surviving the Odds Project. And basically what it does, it empowers youth to express their feelings through making music. And it's like it's an 8 through 10 week program, right? And what it does, you meet up with them about twice a week. And when you meet up with them twice a week, they overview about beats and studio time. And once you record your song, you do a music video. And after the music video, as you see right here, is you do a performance. So it's called like graduation performance. So after you graduate the whole like 8 to 10 week semester of going there, then you present it and you do you perform in front of people. And that program is a really good program. And what my thoughts are after I graduate high school is I'm gonna go to SRJC College, which Ms. Cunning, the Bridges program, has helped me enroll myself into and get a scholarship. And I'm gonna be studying entrepreneurship for business, and I want to open up a restaurant one day, open my own clothing brand, right? And on the side, still pursue my music career and still work with kids through Project Every, work with at-risk youth. So that's my goal and my plan, what I plan on doing after high school. So thank you for having me today.
Hi, my name is Austin. I'm a student at Marin Oaks and also part of the Bridges program. I feel like Bridges has really, it's helping me get ready for life after high school, and I feel like not a lot of classes and schools even do that anymore. They helped me build my resume, which I had no intention of doing at 16, 17. We had mock interviews, which helped me get ready for my interview at H&J, and they hooked me up with a sweet internship, paid internship. And so I got to go there and learn about the field I want to go into. I got to learn how to change oil and like change a tire and rotate rims and all that. It was pretty cool, and I got a sweet little like paycheck at the end. So that was nice. And yeah, I feel like they really just are trying to help me get prepared. They got me a scholarship for SRJC, which I was never expecting to even go. I didn't know if I even wanted to go to college. And so they got me that, and that was nice. So I think Bridges is probably one of the best classes in NUSD. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Miranda and I'm here to discuss about my Sutter Health Hospital internship. This is a really hard internship to get. I was chosen out of many students and adults, and I'm really happy and grateful to the Bridges program who helped me prepare through resume work and mock interviews. I would like to be an RN for my future and career, and this internship has given me really valuable experience. And later on, hoping to transfer to Santa Rosa Junior College and then transfer to Sonoma State. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jason Maldonado. I'm also a student at MO. Through Bridges, I was able to get a head start in college and take a class at College of Marin. They've helped me with scholarships and different college applications, and they also helped me better my speaking abilities in public. I'm taking an EMS class at College of Marin, and I've learned CPR, how to use AEDs and airway adjuncts. My plans after high school is to pursue firefighting, and I plan on going to SRJC.
Hi, my name is Hector. I'm going to be talking about my paid internship at XR Marin. XR Marin is a sort of like technology, like VR sort of place where, you know, you can experience what VR is. And if any of you don't know what VR is basically, it stands for virtual reality. It tries to at least try to like immerse yourself in videos or video games. When I went to the field trip there, I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was a really cool experience. I got to first try out VR, and I didn't think much of it. One of the students, actually, Serena, she made a connection there, and she got to provide the voice for a VR project, a full 360 video of the California State Library, where it went through all the different rooms, and she got to explain what these different rooms are and the history behind it. So that was pretty cool. What I do at XR Marin, basically, I manage their social media websites, their Instagram, their Twitter, and their Facebook. So I'm basically sort of I guess you can say, social media manager. My future is uncertain right now. I'm debating whether or not I still want to go to College of Marin or just jump straight into the workforce, but I really did enjoy my experience at XR Marin, and I'm happy I can put that under my resume.
Hello, my name is Joshua Turner. This is my second year of Bridges. Right now I'm taking a digital photography class at College of Marin, and this is one of my pictures. This is my second college class I've taken. Last semester I've taken astronomy class. Bridges have helped me get a head start on college and helped me figure out what I want to study, and helped me better my communication skills. And after college, I want to probably major in film or some more photography, learn about more photography. So thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Stephanie. I'm a graduate of the Bridges program. I now attend College of Marin and plan on transferring to a four-year university in a few years. Through the program, I gained many skills that have helped me navigate life. I always have wanted to pursue law enforcement as a career. While in the Bridges program, I participated and still am a Novato Police Explorer. The Bridges program gave me other opportunities to look at law enforcement through job shadows, guest speakers, ride-alongs, and station tours. It has helped me investigate what types of policing there is and the difference in big city and small town policing. College is a big step and scary for a new graduate. Bridges gave me the support I needed. They ensured I had everything in order to go: the application, the counseling appointments, course selection, and most importantly, financial aid and scholarships. I even returned this year to get help and support I needed for reapplying for my financial aid, and will be coming back this month to work on scholarships with Ms. Cunny. Last semester, I completed my first semester of college with 12 units with a GPA of 3.24. I am currently enrolled in 15 units and hold down a job at Costco. Bridges helped me be organized and manage many things at once. I have goals, I know what I want, and have what it takes to get it done. I'm hoping by the time I'm 21 years of age to be on a list for a police department. I will continue to work on my education and will pursue my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I will always be a proud graduate of the Bridges program, and I'm so thankful to have been part of it. Yeah.
In closing, we just want to thank our partners. I want to thank Ms. Early for creating this program. It's phenomenal. I'm so grateful to be a part of it. Our teacher, my teacher, Mr. Packman, who's not here tonight, the Marin County Office of Education and the School to Career Liaison, Cede Ayala, the County of Marin Employment Development, and Louisiano, College of Marin, and their support. We couldn't do without them because they get us all enrolled in the classes and they provide a class. 10,000 Degrees for their support with scholarship and financial aid, and the Optimist Club of Novato, who works on the resumes with us. Thank you so much for hearing our program.
Thank you. Can we do a photo?
Mine was Hanny. I need my hat though. We about to be in like the newspaper or something.
Will all the students come up to the front here?
Madam President?
Yes, Trustee Miller?
I would like to thank Francine Cunny.
Yeah.
You have done such a wonderful thing for the kids in Novato and are still doing it, and my hat's off to you. They're so lucky, they just have no idea. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 You guys do great work. Thank you. See ya. Go change the world. No, that was really good. I don't know how, yeah. Okay, we'll move on to our announcements, and we have our student board members. McKenna's up first.
Hello, I'm McKenna O'Neill from Novato High School. This month there is, a PTSA meeting on the 3rd, and tonight there's a fundraiser at Chipotle. We're trying to raise enough money to get a mascot. So like if you go to Chipotle and get dinner, be like, Novato High School sent me. Okay, cool. So for our ASB class next year, we decided to do something different than have like the traditional campaign week with the ASB president and the ASB vice president and so forth. So nobody really wanted to run against each other. So we're trying something that's like a cabinet of 3 leaders. Ms. Searle has been like working with the whole class, and like they've been like running meetings and running different parts of it to like decide everybody's position. But instead of having a campaign week like San Marin, we're just gonna decide it from who's in the class and got accepted. The 5th and 6th is the MSA, like the debut of the MSA spring play at 7 p.m. Next week is spring break, and then on the 19th we have our spring egg hunt, and the person who finds the golden egg gets a free prom ticket. We have a student versus staff volleyball game at lunch on the 19th as well. And our recycling war is a war between our classes, and then we get spirit points. Is the 21st through the 27th, and then we have cast testing from the 22nd to the 26th. And then the 27th, we have a Saturday Academy. And then the 28th is when our prom tickets go on sale. And the 30th and the 31st are when our senior projects are being presented to the panel of people from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then the first is our parking auction for next year. We're not going to have much of a parking lot because of all the construction that's going on with our PAC. So those will hopefully go for a lot of money, and it'll raise a lot of money for next year's senior class. And then the second, we have a PTSA meeting, and the 4th of next month, we have our MSA Honors Dance Concert at 5 p.m., and the SAT, and the tour of Novato.
I'm Jimena Lara from Marin. So in their last competition, the robotics team recently placed 4th out of 62 teams from all over the world and are headed to Houston, Texas for nationals. Journalism is holding a fundraiser this Thursday in collaboration with Kona Ice. Leadership recently met with members from the Do Good, Be Kind organization, and the class is in full swing with preparing for Kindness and Wellness Week that will take place at the end of the month. And we're focusing on 3 kinds of kindness, so being kind to yourself, being kind to others, and being kind to the world. Yesterday, the candidates that are running for ASB positions gave their speeches, and students were asked to vote today, and results will come out later this week.
Thank you. DJ's up next.
I'm DJ from Marin Oaks, and last Friday we went to a DUI trial, and some of our students were members of the jury, and it was a really interesting learning experience, and honestly the whole thing was really interesting. We also got 24 new students on Monday at the start of the new quarter, and tomorrow we are going to have our Futures Day, and a bunch of people are going to come and explain what they do at their jobs, and they're going to give us like some information on how to pursue that certain career, and yeah, that's what we're doing.
Great. So to the student board members, if you guys could stick around for some of our discussion action items and our staff reports, that would be really valuable. I know your schedule, I don't know what it is, and if you got to go, you got to go. I totally, we understand that. But like one of the items is a PE policy. It's on item, it's a discussion action item, it's item D, student athletics and for PE. It's PE, the PE course, and then students taking athletics also. So that's a policy review that's coming back to us. The other item would be anything with the communications and community engagement, if you have any input on that. And also even our district election process, because we're going to be moving to trustee area election. So any of your input would be great. But like I said, if you have to go, you got to go. But I would love for you to stay if you could. All right, Trustee Millerick?
No comment.
Okay, Trustee Nell?
Just a couple of things. I attended the school fuel board meeting, and they have a very active group working on raising funds for the foundation, and report outs on the countywide school fuel efforts were part of the meeting. But I should also announce that the Tour of Novato bicycle fundraiser is begun, and the emails have gone out, and we're hoping as many people as possible will participate and or sign up to sponsor someone who is participating. And the last thing was they put on their annual showcase. I might be butchering the name of that, but every year School Fuel puts on a show, in addition to promoting art education in our elementary schools and secondary schools. They put on a showcase of our students, and it was a good show. It actually doesn't amaze me. I've gotten used to just how talented and creative some of our students are here in Novato. So it was an excellent opportunity for them to show their art, and it also demonstrates, when the community backs public education like School Fuel does, what's possible as far as teaching the arts in our schools, and it's really important. So I'm proud of them, and I'm proud to be part of the process in a small way. So congratulations to School Fuel for their art showcase, and looking forward to supporting them on the bike tour.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Gasson?
So I was able to finally get to a Sinaloa PTSA meeting, which was great, since my daughter goes there. Also participated in 2 separate meetings, one in dyslexia and the other special ed, both of which had parents in attendance. And I wanted to say thank you to Kelly Johnson for facilitating those 2 meetings. I thought it was a good opportunity to listen to some community members and parents. So I appreciated the starting of conversations there. I also went to the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, actually the new member event, to the 3 new people that are on that committee. So that was great. I also a couple of us went to the MCSBA dinner event. I actually sat among the College of Marin board, so that was fun. But I snuck out a little early, along with Greg, to go to supporting teens through difficult times. And thank you to Amy Carter and staff for putting that on. I thought it was well attended and very helpful for our community. And finally wrapped up with a Sinaloa Care and Builders Club, which is done periodically at Sinaloa. And we actually, Principal Larson and Saisi use their time on the Saturdays to do things around the campus at school, either helping kids build things, clean up and stuff. And I went because my Girl Scout troop and the 7th grade girls, they'll have people or owls in them sometimes seem to help with that.
Hopefully those owls are full. Full of little critters.
And I was able to attend the, on the 21st, I went to San Marin High School's project exhibition night.
Good. Yeah.
That was a beautiful, I thought it was really well done. The various groups, the aviation group, the robotics group, the STEM group, the physics group, all the kids were really into what they were doing. They had a great way of explaining to all of us, including me, what they were doing. They really wanted to be there. It wasn't a matter of, well, you have to be here. They loved it. They were collaborating. They knew, I asked them the 6 C's. They could rattle that off for me. It was just a great job. Great thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Aguila?
Yeah. I also attended the dyslexia and special education meeting that Kelly Johnson put out. I was there for the special education part of it. And I also want to say thank you for putting this together and getting the input of parents and principals. The charter school was there. And what I have to say is that there's a lot of work ahead of us. And a lot to think about, a lot to organize, a lot to do. But I'm thankful that it's been looked at, it's been talked about, it's been written, it's and that you're moving forward. And so thank you very much for that. And I look forward to see some continuous improvement on that. So thank you. I attended the LCAP on the 25th as well. And again, the room was always packed and a lot of good information. We're looking at different things. On the 28th, I attended the DLAC meeting. And again, we're looking at trying to get input from parents and just a little heads up, you'll be getting a survey coming up. So hang in there with those surveys and just do your best. So, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you. I was on vacation last week, but I just want to say that we're on spring break next week. If you're unaware of that, if you're watching us from home, the school district will be closed next week. This office will be closed as well. But there are also, this coming Thursday, we have 3 open houses at Loma Verde, Lou Sutton, and Pleasant Valley. So that's it. I almost said superintendent. Whoa. Oh my gosh. Mr. Koska, any announcements?
So just a couple things. One, it's been, as everybody knows, this hasn't been a super sunny springtime. It's kind of a hard time in our district with some recent budget decisions we've had to make. So it's so nice to walk through the building and see the artwork that's up on the walls. And you know, a day hasn't passed since this art went up that I haven't heard 5 or 6 people talking about, wow, look at what our kids can do. And so I thank our students for the great work. I thank School Fuel for their support of the good work and making sure that it gets up here and brightens up this time of year. So thank you for that. And I would encourage everybody to participate in the upcoming Tour of Novato to continue the support for our schools. So thank you.
Okay. Moving on to non-agenda public comment, I have 2 speakers. I have Kate McNear and Jana Morbitz.
Thank you. Well, thank you for already mentioning the artwork and Tour of Novato. That's what I'm here to talk about tonight. And let's see. Well, first I just want to say that the art that you see hanging all around the district is the art that was submitted from students kindergarten through 12th grade, all schools in Novato, and it was submitted for the Art Smart Showcase. We've got over 400 pieces. They're amazing, and they're hanging all over. They'll be up here at the district office through the end of April, and so we encourage everybody to come and take a look. At that point, they will move to the City Hall. At least a lot of them. I'm not sure we'll be able to hang all of them, but they will be at the City Hall for the Tour of Novato. The Tour of Novato and Community Fair is May 4th in downtown Novato. It's the biggest single fundraiser for all Novato schools. We encourage everyone to come out and celebrate education in Novato. There are events for everybody, from Tyke Trike through the family ride, Novato Classic, which is a bit longer ride, and the downtown walk. And if you can't make it on May 4th, there is a spin session on May 5th. The free community fair takes place from 10 to 2. It's going to showcase student talent on the stage, student art in City Hall. There's an inflatable zone. There are a lot of booths to visit. There's food. So we hope everybody can come out for that. April 7th, this Sunday, is the deadline for getting a t-shirt with your registration. After that, it's if we have them. So please, everybody, visit the website. It's www.tourofnovato.org and register. We're also looking for volunteers. We need them that week leading up to the event, the day of the event. This is a big event. It takes hundreds of people. We would love to have both student volunteers. You can get credit for it, as well as adult volunteers. And again, you can do that at our website as well. All right, thank you. Hope to see you at the tour.
Thank you.
It's not my item, but you also came to the Linwood auction. You didn't mention that. It was our first auction in like several years that we actually threw, and thank you for coming and supporting us. But my item is different, a little less uplifting, but so thank you for letting me speak tonight. And it's hard to bring this up, but it has come to my attention that one of the board members during board meetings has been doing some online shopping and personal emails when they should be focused on making decisions that benefit my children, both my children that go to school here and my students. All right, so that wasn't actually true. However, I bring it up because I am here to talk about the struggles that the teachers are facing every day in the classroom. I am thrilled that we have chosen to purchase the Chromebooks that are a wonderful tool for our students. And at the same time, I'm disheartened that we have not gotten the training and safety. Teachers, students, nor parents have been trained in a way that we need to be. We have asked for monitoring software and have been told it's too expensive. And that's come up again for me because of the recent incident in Petaluma where a second grader was found viewing sexually explicit content on a school-issued iPad with all the firewalls. That student wasn't looking for that content. It was a few clicks in, and all of a sudden, that's what was on the iPad. So I would like you to think for just a moment that if a second grader can stumble upon something like that on a firewalled device, what can our older tech-savvy students do? With a little bit of skill and a lot of determination, or maybe just a little. So Petaluma went into reaction mode and had to pull all the iPads. I feel very strongly that we need monitoring software. I'm not very tech savvy on our Chromebooks. My earlier example was not to put you at unease, but just to make a comment that it has been told to us that teachers are to monitor the Chromebooks and screens in our room. It's insane. There is no possible way for a teacher to monitor 30 screens in a room. You can see the backs of all the screens here. As soon as a student sees a teacher or another adult walking towards them, they minimize a screen. And we have no way of knowing what was on the screen before we headed that direction. It's a huge issue, and it's starting to become one that is making the Chromebooks more of a challenge and more of a distraction than they are a learning tool. So students have also figured out how to send virtual notes. They open up a Google Doc, they share it with somebody, maybe even in a different class, and they're typing notes to each other. How we used to hand notes, now they can do it, and if you just are glancing at a screen, it looks like they're working on a Google document. So again, unless I'm able to go up, and I can't do that when I'm here, that student's doing something else. I would like to see our district be proactive rather than reactive in this matter. It's time for us to install the software that we need as teachers to utilize the devices that the district has spent so much money on. I respectfully request that you purchase the software, and please help teachers keep our students and classrooms as safe learning environments. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to follow up to that, maybe we could have Tim do a little more work on that and give some information to the board if it requires a staff report. I know he spoke to this before about those firewalls and things like that.
Debbie, I've had a couple of my graduate students doing some research in this area, and I'll have the information forwarded to Tim so he can review it. It's one of the new startups in San Francisco. Well, what you're missing is the kids are moving faster than you are.
Okay.
You're just old and slow, but we got to go faster. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I can handle that. Okay, so follow up. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I don't actually even know if this is where I'm supposed to do it, but
it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got Tim Rocco, which is the guy in charge of that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to our first staff report, and we'll have Chris Koska do an introduction to this. This is our district election process.
So to all of those who have been closely following our board meetings, we made the recent decision to move towards area trustees. And so tonight we have David Soldani here from Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rood, and Romo, and he's going to share some information with you about what this process looked like going forward to answer any questions you might have. So with that, David, come on down.
Well, good evening, everyone. I think you have a draft timeline somewhere in the agenda materials. Okay. And I think I'll kind of use that for our discussion because it has all of the milestone events that have to take place. You will note that right out of the gate, April 2nd, it looks like we've scheduled approval of a demographic services contract. That's going to get moved to the 16th is my understanding. But you can at least see the order of things.
Can we just back up just a little bit? Sorry.
Sure.
The board approved on March 21st, approved the resolution, and maybe we started with that. Maybe if you could just start with that, that would be
so. And I'm going to I'm going to start before that, actually, if you don't mind.
Good.
So what are we even talking about? Currently, the way this governing board is elected is at large. So there are 7 board members, and these board members can live anywhere in the district boundaries. Doesn't matter where you live. When it comes time to vote, all the registered voters in the district boundaries get to cast their vote for 3 seats or 4 seats, however many are up for that cycle. Now, there is a law called the California Voting Rights Act that was modeled heavily after the Federal Voting Rights Act. And that law says that you can't use an at-large method of election if it impairs the ability of a protected class to elect representation of their choice or to influence the outcome of elections. And in connection with this law, built into that legislation is an ability for any member of the public or plaintiff's attorney to file a written demand to the school district to request that the school district make this change from at-large to district-based voting. The city, for example, recently got such a letter. And under this law, if you make that move to transition your elections after you receive that letter, you could be responsible for paying that attorney their fees for the time they took in putting that package together. And that amount is capped at $30,000. Now, this board, recognizing that it's at the doorstep and the city received such a letter, took the action to adopt a resolution stating its intention to transition the way that it elects, going from an at-large system to a district-based voting system. And so that having already been approved, nobody can then send you a letter and you don't have to pay them money at this point because you've already stated your intention to move forward. As long as you can accomplish that transition in time for the next regular governing board election, which is in 2020. So what I'm here to talk about tonight is how we get from where we are today to that 2020 cycle. What are the steps that have to be taken? And I'll preface this by saying that it used to be a lot simpler, but the law changed. New laws went into effect a few years ago. It used to be that you could simply have a meeting, show up with a few maps, and you would vote on the maps and you would be done. But there's some new laws that came into being that require about 4 times as many public hearings and a robust community engagement process. So I'm going to take you through what that process is in order to take you from where you are today to the 2020 election being trustee area based. So the first step in that process you've already taken, and that is to declare your intention to make that transition. What happens now is what's called the mapping process. You have to create maps. But before you can create any maps, you have to have 2 public hearings. And at those public hearings, we hear from members of the board, we hear from members of the public, anybody that wants to talk, anybody that has an opinion in terms of what should go into the maps. Should they, for example, follow attendance boundaries? Should they follow city boundaries? Should we make sure that each governing board seat crosses over multiple attendance areas? There are a number of different considerations, and they all have one thing in common. They're all local. The individuals that are going to help you put your maps together, they don't live here. And so they rely heavily on feedback from members of the public and members of the board in terms of what neighborhoods logically belong together, who should be voting for the same seats. And so in order to flesh that out, there is a process whereby you have to have 2 public hearings before you draw even 1 map. So at those public hearings, you talk about mapping criteria. You'll have a presentation from a demographer who's going to walk you through what goes into the map creation. There's a couple of legal components that have to be respected, and then there are a host of local components, and those are up to you. The bare minimum legal requirements are that the areas have to be roughly proportional in population. If you have 7 areas, you can't have one area that's got 10,000 people in it and then the area next door with only 100 people. That's a constitutional consideration. It's 1 person, 1 vote. So you want them to be roughly proportional in size. And that's actually measured by total population, which may seem a little counterintuitive. It's not measured by registered voter. It's measured by total population, every man, woman, and child. The other consideration is you want to make sure that you're not taking the entirety of your protected class population and packing them into one area. That's actually called packing. The opposite of that is when you take that same community and disperse them throughout so that they don't have a voice in any of the areas that you create, and that's the opposite of packing. That's called cracking. So those are kind of the legal minimums, and then there's some traditional districting criteria. Like you want areas that are compact. You don't want weird squiggly lines. You want communities of interest to stay together. So neighborhoods that belong together should stay together. You don't want a weird line running right through a neighborhood that belongs together if you can help it. So these mapping hearings are really designed to flesh those issues out so that when they come back with maps, they make sense for your jurisdiction here locally. So after those 2 public hearings, the next step is a community engagement process. And we have a little bit of discretion, a little bit of leeway there. It's not spelled out specifically in the code like those 2 public hearings are. What we have done to satisfy that community engagement requirement is we'll conduct a couple of open house type meetings where members of the public are invited to come in. We'll have it at you know, 1 or 2 school sites, and we'll have the demographer there. And the demographer will have some draft maps that they've put together. And it's an opportunity, it's less formal than a board meeting, it's just open house style. People can come and go, they can make comments, they can draw their own maps, they can, you know, doodle on the maps that we have if they want to move lines somewhere. And really the demographer's there to get additional community feedback. And at the conclusion of those 1 or 2 or 3, however many meetings that you have, they'll summarize all of that feedback. They'll come back to you as a board. And then it's the final 2 public hearings, post-map hearings. And so at those hearings, you'll then have a series of maybe 2 to 3 maps with comments from the public. And so you'll hopefully settle on one version. And then you have a second post-map hearing where you could make, but you don't have to make. But typically at that second hearing, you would make a final selection in terms of which plan you'd like, A, B, or C. Once you've made that decision and you've selected a map plan, that item then goes from you to your county committee on school district organization here in Marin County. They have to have their own public hearing. Now, it's a little confusing. It's actually the county committee's hearing, but they have to have the hearing here in your district boundaries. So they will travel here, and I would suggest you do it right here in your boardroom, and they'll sit up here and they'll have their own, you know, name tags, and they'll conduct their own public hearing on the map that you've selected. And at the conclusion of that process, they either approve it or disapprove it. Typically, they approve it. It's really for them to make sure that you've gone through the process. It's not for them to second guess how you've made your maps, but it's really for them to make sure that you've done what you're supposed to do and you've had all the minimum number of hearings. Now, once the county committee approves it under the law, that normally triggers an election requirement. In other words, once it's approved, it then goes to your voters. Now, the issue with that is there's the extra time and expense of going through another election cycle, but more importantly, there's the uncertainty of the outcome. If your voters vote it down, and it's voted down along racial lines, that could be evidence that's used against you in a subsequent lawsuit. And so how we've dealt with this is that we seek a waiver of that election requirement from the State Board of Education. In fact, in 99 out of 100 instances where we've made this transition, we always go for a waiver. And the waivers are fairly routine at this point. They're typically on the consent calendar. They don't get pulled from the calendar for special discussion. Typically there's a group of 3 or 4 each State Board Education meeting. If you want to pull their agendas, you can see them right under consent. It's 3 and 4 every other month. And then once they've granted that waiver, well, I should back up because there's a separate waiver process. And actually that waiver process looks no different than your other waiver processes that you've gone through before. So for example, class size reduction waiver or bond capacity waiver, it's the same process in that first you're required to meet and confer with your bargaining units, your school site councils and others and get their position on it, whether they're neutral or whether they support it or in opposition. And then you have yet another public hearing just on the waiver. So you have a public hearing, you get public input on that, then you adopt the waiver, file it with the state board. So the last thing that happens then is the state board looks at that waiver, gets it approved on one of their meetings, and once that happens, that's the end of the process. The only thing remaining is to have your demographer send the computerized shape files of the new areas over to the registrar of voters. Now that piece, the very final piece, has to be done at least 130 days prior to the next election. So typically we like to have this process wrapped up before June. So in this case, June 2020, we want to be done. So when you back the timeline up from there, and you'll see a proposed timeline in your packet, that current packet gives you plenty of time to accomplish all of these public hearings, the community engagement, Even though we're one meeting off, there's still plenty of time to make those, just adjust everything by one, and you can see that we'll still make it by plenty of time. So that's the process in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any questions about that, and then we're going to talk about another. Is the 7 to 5 a separate item, or is that
no?
part
It's
of
on
this?
here, and that's what I was going to say. There's a resolution attached to this also about moving board members from 7 to 5. This board has not had that full. I'm interested in that.
Okay,
100%.
so let me address
but this
that.
full board hasn't had that discussion.
Okay, so in connection with this process, there's very similar to this process. There is an opportunity for a governing board that has 5 or 7 or 3 to change the number of their membership. Now that process, by comparison, is very truncated. It's simply, you have a meeting, you have an item on there, and you adopt a resolution saying, we would like to change, we'd like to go from 5 to 7, or 7 to 5, or 5 to 3, whatever it is. As a board, you adopt that resolution that then gets transmitted to the county committee. Same committee that's going to hear your redistricting, and then your county committee will then give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, and then same issue, you're going to need a separate, well, not a separate, you're going to need a waiver for that. Because under the law, when you change the number of board members, that goes out to a vote also. So what we've done for those districts that want to change the number of their governing board members, it actually works very well to pair it with the redistricting process. So at the time you're drawing maps, if you know going into that process that you would rather have 5 areas than 7, for example, then we would create maps with just 5 areas. And then at some point you would adopt that resolution that would signal to the county committee that we would like you to approve our, not only our map, but our changing from a membership of 7 to 5. And then we would submit, then you'd have the public hearing on the waiver of that issue. You can have it at the same meeting, but separate items, 2 separate hearings. And then you combine it and you send one application to the State Board of Education, and you just tie that together with your redistricting. That's the way that we've done them in the past.
So there's no election for that as long as there's full agreement of the board?
No, as long as there is a waiver of that requirement from the State Board of Education.
Right. Okay, yeah, okay.
Now I'm happy to answer any questions
Yes.
that you might have.
So in the simple question first, in the move from 7 to 5, or whatever, we have that conversation. I understand there's no election of the public if the state board waives the requirement for that public election. What action would be required by the board? The majority of a 7-member board to choose to change its membership?
Yes.
So 4 members of 7
yes.
would be an adequate vote of the public officials here to move in that direction. And then if you took it to the state for a waiver and somebody went to the state and said, I voted against it, I think it's a bad idea, could the state then say, well, then it's got to go to the public, or how would?
No, I mean, the state board has discretion. They could
do
approve
anything
the
it
waiver,
wants?
or they can deny the waiver.
Oh, okay.
Based on whatever information they have in front of them.
Okay. Okay, I'm not proposing that's what happened. I'm just trying to
Sure.
figure out how complicated this,
And there's one
how much of a knot we can tie ourselves into here.
And the one missing piece to that is, remember, it does, before it goes to the state board, it goes to your county committee. So your county committee has to approve that before you can take it up to the state board. So that's another component.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other? Trustee Nell and Trustee Gasson?
I think I'll start with a little more detail on the demographics. Does the law provide for which demographic information is going to be input into the GIS system?
Yes,
what is that data? Can you add to it if you want? Use other sources?
So the gold standard for redistricting in terms of calculating the demographics is the census. That's right. Now, can you also take into account that, for example, and I don't know this area, but let's say there's one corner of your district where there's a massive development that's gone in the last 10 years. Can you program your areas knowing that there's some extra bodies there that weren't reflected in the census? Absolutely. And why would we do that? The reason why we have to do that, and I'm glad you brought this up, is when you're in this system, when you're district-based, you need to take a look at your map every 10 years. So when the census data gets released, and in this case it will be released, the 2020 census data will be released in April of 2021. So when that comes out, you're going to need to look at that data and compare it with your maps to make sure that now you don't have an area with 10,000 next to an area with 1,000. So a lot of times if we know that there are some newer areas that have come online in the last 10 years, we will overpopulate using the census data to compensate for that. Our goal is that you don't want to have to tinker with these after the census. And I've personally gone through, I went through a round of these prior to the 2010 census, and of all the maps we did, we didn't have to change any of them. So that they know that when you're at this kind of end of the decennial calendar, they know to make sure to make those adjustments so that any changes, if any, have to be made, they're minimal.
So just want to, so the gold standard is the census. Yes. Is that the only thing that's allowed? Because there's a lot of other demographic information available. The world of marketing, there's assessor data, there's individual district data,
there
like
is,
the sewer district, so are these things, would that complicate things, or does it?
Potentially. I would look at it like this. The minimum that you would use would be the census data. Because if there were a challenge under the Federal Voting Rights Act, the way that they would measure where the bodies are and who are the bodies would be the census. That's what they would look to. They wouldn't look to the marketing stuff. They wouldn't look to the other stuff. So as long as you're okay under the census and you wanted to supplement and add some additional detail using those other sources, that's okay. But at a minimum, your numbers need to be right based on the census.
Okay, so that's a possibility that if we did something like that, is there any history of that being challenged later on? But essentially we're making the decision based on the census, but during these monthly meetings in the process, if other information was brought to bear, that's good, or is that bad?
I've not seen it come up. We typically just use the census data. If there's some compelling reason to use the stuff, it would be...
Are you saying we can't use Facebook data? We can't use Google Analytics? We can't use... I mean, if you think about the world today, sure, and the kind of data that is out there, so well, I guess what I'm getting at is, do we exclude it or do we allow it?
What's going to have the most weight and credibility is the census data. Those other things, and that's why, let me give you a different example. You want to make sure that it's correct under the census. So if there's a conflict between Google Analytics and census, you better go with the census. Now, as long as your data is good under the census and you want to sprinkle in some extra information on top of that from Google, that's fine. But at a minimum, remember that the measuring stick is the census data. So that's got to be right according to that measurement. Does that clarify things a little?
Yeah, I think it does. Okay. I mean, as we're going forward, I guess we'll see if it's relevant or not.
Exactly.
Trustee Gasson?
Going back to if there was a change from 7 to 5, I guess in my head I can't figure, I mean, how did the 2 additional people fall off?
So how this is typically done. So let me give you let's do a real world example. 2020, how many seats are up?
4.
So what you would do is, guess how many seats are going to be up instead? 2. So those 4 of the 2, that's one way of doing it, potentially. So those 2 of those 4 could fall off. And now you're opening up elections in 2 areas instead of 4 areas. That's one way of doing it.
Go ahead.
Well, no. Sorry. So maybe my head hasn't moved fast enough on this one, though. If you go, to me that's more complicated then, because if you go to districts and you've got, how do you know which 2? I don't know. I'm not. I guess we'll figure it out. I mean, I get that you just put 2 up, but if you each have your own area, like Maria and Derek are in the same neighborhood, so.
Well, and as a board, you can decide which areas you want to open up. So when you're looking at a map, you would say, we think it makes sense to have this area and this area go up, or, that's really up to this board and how you design it. And I think the principle you want to be guided by is to have the least amount of disruption, because you do want some continuity, and the redistricting process is not meant to take people off the board. In fact, there's a provision in the Ed Code that says even when you change to this, nobody's terms get cut short as a result. So even if two of you are in the same area and you still have 2 years left on your term, you serve out those 2 years. You'll just have an area that's unrepresented during that time. So that's actually provided for under the law. But you'll have more clarity on this when you see like what the areas are and where folks are, then you can kind of decide where does it make sense to open the areas up first for election.
Yeah, I'm still confused. Trustee Cooper.
She asked my question,
Yeah.
so I just want to know more about the kind of the nuts and bolts of how to go from 7 to 5 and how it all works. But there's probably multiple scenarios that we could look at.
A lot of different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah.
Trustee Gila.
As far as timing goes, I'm still a little bit confused about, you said with the minimum we want of data is the census, so that's 2020, but the information won't come out till 2021. But you said
We're going to build your areas based on 2010 census data.
Okay. All right, that takes care of that question. As far as the other
We don't have
question,
2020 data yet.
right, and it wouldn't come out till 2021 anyway.
That's
and
right.
you need the information by June of
Yeah.
2020.
So we will be using 2020 census
Okay, and
data.
then my
I'm
sec-
sorry, 2010. Now I'm saying it.
Okay, and then my second question, as far as rushing things, is there a rush?
I would say if you want to maintain your immunity from a challenge or a lawsuit under your at-large system, you would want to finish prior to the 2020 election, because that's your next scheduled at-large election. As long as you're finished before then, which then requires you to be finished technically in June of 2020. So when you back up all the public hearings, the state board, county committee meetings, everything else that happens, you see why you need a little bit of a lead time. Now, you're still at a good part in the calendar. You still have time to do it, even if you wanted to take a look at those dates and you wanted to elongate that process, you could. There's still time.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure everything's done by June.
That's what I was told, that there is no rush, that as long as we have stated, yes, we will go ahead and do this and move to a district election, that once that's said and we've said it, then
Well, that doesn't last forever. It will
No.
last you till the next election
but
cycle.
as far as feeling rushed, that there is no need for the board to feel rushed.
No, the board
Yeah.
shouldn't feel rushed. You have, at this part of the calendar, like I said, we still have plenty of time to get everything done by June of 2020.
Yeah, I think we're in a good place compared to other districts and cities.
Absolutely.
I have one public comment, but Trustee Miller, or can I do the public comment first?
Yeah, do the comment,
Yeah.
and then I have a
Then we'll come back to the
couple
board.
of questions
Okay.
mixed together.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, Kate McNear.
Well, thank you for the information. I think these comments may be a little bit premature, given that there are going to be a number of opportunities in the future. But I did want to ask you to consider two ideas during this decision process. The first is that I would suggest that you strongly consider reducing the board from 7 to 5. It seems that 7-member boards are fairly unusual in California and tend to be in larger metropolitan areas as far as I can tell. And my understanding is that the area that NUSD serves, the population is approximately 65,000. So with 7 board members, you know, if you divide it evenly, it would be roughly 9,000, which is a pretty small pool, I think. And I think that larger districts would provide a larger pool of potential candidates who might be willing to run. There's also, you know, cost savings. It's minor, I know, but in terms of the elections, health benefits, stipends, you know, I don't think that's a huge consideration, but considering our financial status, any savings is welcome. Secondly, and again, this is very early in the process, but I would suggest that you consider trying to avoid drawing district boundary lines that are similar to the boundary lines for school assignments. My concern is that if we end up, particularly if we have 7, if we end up with 1 trustee per elementary school, or maybe 2 elementary schools, that trustee will feel really beholden to represent the needs of that particular school over the needs of the whole district. I think neighborhood representation can be a very good thing, but I am concerned that decisions need to be made for the benefit of the entire district, and that it may be very difficult to do that if you always have one school front of mind. Let's see. Yeah, and so my concern is that that would inadvertently create more division and more competition for resources among neighborhoods. So I suggest that you consider drawing boundaries so that each district would include portions of more than 1 elementary school, so each neighborhood is served by more than 1 trustee. Anyway, I think our goal of having diverse and effective neighborhood representation is great. I think it might be more easily achieved with 5 districts. Anyway, thank you.
All right, Trustee Miller, back to you.
Thanks. Really thoughtful comments. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. There's a bunch of different solutions that I've seen to this puzzle, and I don't know if any of them, which ones are legal and which ones are not. So I'm going to sort of tell you the stories I've heard, and you can say, you know, never.
Yes or no.
Yeah, exactly. You take your paddle and put up or down. So the the Shoreline School District has, if I get this right, 3 districts and 5 trustees. And so 2 trustees live in one district, 2 trustees live in another, and 1 trustee in the third. I think I got that right. But the elections are at large across the entire district.
No immunity under the Voting Rights Act.
Okay. So if you had, I'm going to twist that a little bit, 3 districts, 2 trustees in one district, 2 trustees in another, and 1 in a third. But inside of each of those districts, the people voted for either 2 trustees or 1 trustee, depending, as long as the balance of population was about right.
Same answer.
Not immune.
Not immune.
So
1 area per board member. That's the only model that's perfectly immune.
That's where I was trying to get to. Is there's all these. You know, well, we could do this, but I guess I'm trying to get you to say the simple sentence you just said, which is no. It's
1 area per person. That's the only safe harbor under the law.
Okay.
And if I could just dovetail on 2 of those comments. First of all, I hope you attend the public hearings, because those are excellent
We can't
comments.
keep her away.
But you said something that triggered something I wanted to bring up, and that is the cost savings, although when you were talking about the cost savings of having fewer, stipends, but there's also potentially an election-related cost savings that I failed to mention, and that is, right now when you conduct elections, you're conducting elections in every single precinct in your district every 2 years, and you are paying your share of the ballot printing materials and running the precincts. When you move to this system, instead of doing that district-wide every 2 years, you're doing it in 3 areas or 4 areas. So 40% of the district, 60% of the district. You should be able to realize some cost savings as well. But
from the registrar.
That's right.
So a similar point to that, then I'll stop, is the county board of supervisors are elected by district, but the college district are elected at large across the whole county. So to run for a seat on the college board, you have to be able to mount a campaign almost as large as a California state representative, not quite, but it is a large piece of real estate, and I don't know of any county office that, except the countywide office, the treasurer and the assessor, who are faced countywide seat elections. Any other? So that's a very interesting dynamic for who can think about running because of the support you need.
That's right. If you're running at large, you have to have a lot of resources.
Yeah, I mean, in Novato, maybe not so much, but all of Marin County, yep.
Sure. But even in Novato, it's a lot easier to run in an area of 9,000 than it is to run in an area of 50-something thousand. That's a lot fewer doors to knock. But the other valid point is, you do want to avoid that siloing effect. And in fact, sometimes on purpose, and I'm getting ahead of myself in talking about mapping, but on purpose, we will sometimes draw areas that cross multiple attendance boundaries so that we avoid this sense of being beholden to this school. And, you know, when the project list comes up, well, I want to make sure I get the swimming pool over here because those are the people that voted for me, when really you want to do what's best for the whole district. And we've had, you know, larger districts like Riverside, for example, was very specific in their mapping criteria. They said, we want to make sure every board area covers multiple areas and has at least one or two different district sites in the areas just for that very reason. So just it's something to think about. And these are the types of things that come up in public hearings, hopefully, so that it kind of guides our thinking about these issues.
Thank you very
much. Trustee Gasson?
So that was exactly what I was going to bring up. And to Kate's point, that I've been struggling with is that we have 2 high schools and 2 middle schools. And while I think we all, you know, already do the best that we can for all schools equally, and I would continue to do that, I can see where, I mean, I really wish that there was some ability to have at least one at-large person, because you intentionally don't have, you know, you don't want an equal number of people on the board, but when you have a situation like that where you've got, you know, just two schools, you inevitably are going to be split whichever way the board happens to be. So I know that's for future
it's human nature
conversation, but I just wanted to, I mean, that's been really weighing on me. That
it's a valid point. And one of the ways you can overcome that is just through good board governance and training and just kind of getting into that mindset. But it is absolutely it's a fair criticism. One of the cons, if you will, there's pros and cons to moving to that system, and that's been identified in many districts as one of the cons, is avoiding this whole siloing effect and being beholden just to a subset when really you really should be serving the entire district. So that's still a puzzle people are working on and trying to solve.
Trustee Gila, and then we're going to move.
Yeah, so after hearing like the work that has to be done with the mapping and all that, seems there's going to be a lot of energy involved in that, and so it brings me back to the census. So if this has to be done by 2020, why wouldn't we want to get more current information 2021, and then not, I mean, I guess my question is, you know, what would be wrong with waiting till we get that current information?
Sure. So that means that you would go through a 2020 at-large election cycle. Somebody could then sue you for running an at-large election cycle when you've already adopted a resolution stating your intention to move forward.
Right.
So you would still be vulnerable to a lawsuit.
And you mentioned that earlier. Yeah. But but again, if we've committed to say yes, we want to go ahead and do the election in a district manner, and so we've committed to that. Why would we be sued and say, but we're waiting for the correct updated information?
I'm not saying you will be sued, but I'm saying that if somebody filed a lawsuit, I couldn't defend it on the grounds that, well, we said we were going to move and we're going to get there eventually. That's not a defense.
It wouldn't be eventually. It would be until we get a current information.
And I'm saying that would not be a defense. You would no longer have immunity. Right now you have immunity, but that immunity is a window, and it lasts from now until the next election cycle. And even if you say we promise we'll get it done, you're still going forward with an at-large election, and somebody could file that and say you can't do this at-large election in your district. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying that somebody would. I'm just saying it leaves you vulnerable. Right now you're not vulnerable, and you won't be until you go forward with another at-large election. Okay. Does that make sense?
And what would happen if we get the results from the census at back in 2021? We can still work around that, like.
Yeah. So what we would do, so you have your areas. You would conduct your first election, your district-based election in 2020, and then the following year you get the new data. You would look at that data and you'd match it up to your areas and say, are these areas still good, or do we need to make changes? And if they're good, you can just keep the same areas. And if not, if you need to move a line here or there because population has changed, then you vote on it. It's not the same level of process to make adjustments as it is in getting this thing going the first go-around.
Does it cost money to move the lines?
Yeah, but it's nowhere near what we're talking about for this startup process, because you don't do that community engage, you don't do any of this stuff. You just look at these maps, you make an adjustment, we show up with the resolution saying, here's the data, the numbers have moved, we've moved your lines. But again, when we design these, knowing that we're on this part of the decennial calendar, we try to build in some cushion so that when the numbers do come out in 2021, more often than not, we're still going to be okay. We're still going to be within the population deviations.
Well, you can. Yeah, Trustee Nell. Okay. Alan, were you? Yeah.
Ellen Harris, Sunset Parkway, Novato. I didn't realize this item was on the agenda this evening. First, I'd like to thank the board for appointing me last meeting to the District Parcel Tax Oversight Committee with Trustee Gassant. I look forward to an interesting educational experience there. After our meeting, I attended the city's first public hearing on the district election process that they're going through. It's my impression, and by the way, my supervisor on the Parcel Tax Committee has a full set of information on those hearings. It's my impression that there's a lot of opportunity for cost sharing in the process of establishing your districts and your boundaries through the information that the city clerk has already received from their engaged consultants. Full demographic maps are already available and are being made public, identifying all of the special categories of individuals. Some remarks were made at that meeting that after the city is completed with our process, which will be done by, I think, the 10th of June, because they're under a very tight deadline, that the County Board of Elections then will establish, for at least the city of Novato, a whole set of new voting precincts. And I have no idea what the other special purpose districts in the city will do. Fire, sewer, water, but I'd probably be willing to make a bet with any of you that they go along with the same districts that the city sets up because of all the cost considerations and voter confusion that would otherwise result. And my suggestion is that may be something you want to think about here too, as well as the possible unexpected cost of election details that would come up if you're dealing with a different set of districts. I realize your districts have to be different from the cities because the absolute geographic boundary for the school district is larger. But by the end of June, you might know whether you can just tack on and expand out if you decide to go to a smaller board. My guess is the city will probably stay with 5 elected council members. So anyway, thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Do you have anything to add to that, David, at all with the city in the same process? They're under the time crunch, not like us, in working with their demographer in some way, or.
But because you don't have coterminous areas, it is really a separate analysis. It's a little more complicated than tacking stuff on after the fact. So you really need your own data, which is going to be different because your territory is different. The only cost-sharing opportunity is if you use maybe the same demographer and they've already downloaded all of the census block data. They'll still need data that goes beyond the city limits, but If there is an opportunity for cost savings, I don't know that it would be very significant, just because they do have to do a lot of work and they have to show up to your public hearings. They don't combine them with the city, so they're really doing two separate exercises. But I'll defer to whatever, if your demographer wants to give you a discount, I won't complain about that.
Okay, so for the board, next steps, as you saw in here, like tonight we were looking at potentially approving a contract with the demographer, but I think in agenda planning we discussed that a little bit, that potentially it could come on the 16th. That's our next step. It's a special meeting we have on the 16th. We're going to tack that on there.
I think you have two proposals at this point.
Okay. Now, the discussion around reducing the board members from 7 to 5, I don't think that discussion can really happen on the 16th. I don't think it can. We need some data to start with. Why not? What are you saying? Well, because it's more of a designated conversation, that meeting. It's around looking at our parcel tax and things like that for that special meeting. So that's why there's just the consent item would be the demographer, and there might be something else on there. But I think to have a different discussion, two different things, I don't think it's going to go.
So it's one thing to hire a contractor to bring us data. It's another thing to have a policy discussion at a special meeting. I think we got to have policy discussions at our general meetings.
That's what I'm kind of
also gearing towards. That's when the community's expecting to hear them.
Yeah.
But I would just add to that. Speaking of cost savings, what you don't want to do, if you want to have that discussion, you should probably resolve that issue before the demographer creates maps. Because if you don't, your demographer is going to have to show up with a couple versions of 7s, a couple versions of 5s, and that's going to prolong everything else and potentially confuse things. So I think that policy discussion should precede the drawing of that map, and it could even be a part of that public hearing, like, hey, demographer, one of the issues we want you to look at is we really would like 5 areas instead of 7. So if you can sort that out before it, I think it will simplify things for this board.
But let me just, sorry. So we don't have to
enough time in the timeline.
Yeah.
We can push every one of those dates back. That's right.
Yeah, we can have that part of that conversation.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll stick with just approving the demographer on consent for the 16th, and then we'll hold off on the 7 to 5.
So we're staying in listening mode for the first two public meetings, and then we're starting the decision-making mode.
We'll develop the conversation as we move through this.
We're
not rushing into the...
It makes sense to the community. We get our voice first. Everybody's heard I had a chance. Nobody says, well, but you didn't ask me, because we did. We asked them. And then we come down to a decision.
I'm good. I'm personally good with that. I don't know, but...
So I have a request when we get to that point, if we can come up, I keep just wanting to say Yancey can give us some numbers on the cost difference between 5 and 7, since that was brought up. And also if there's a difference, not just in terms of the cost to the district, but for the election, is there a difference
the ROV,
if you run?
So Yancey, I would check with the registrar of voters and get an estimate. What do we pay now to do at-large every time? And then what would that look like if we're doing 3 and 4 or 3 and 2? So there's the ROV cost, registrar of voters, and then the stipend costs. I think you can kind of break those down separately.
Okay.
There's going to be a little bit of difference going 5 to 7. There's going to be a huge difference going to district because it'll have the number of ballots that have to get printed. That'll be the big factor. Yeah.
May or may not.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge cost savings, but I think the efficiencies and what it'll help with the boundary. I agree with what Kate had to say. That's where I'm at. So, okay, are we in a good place with the board moving forward? Okay, David, we really appreciate you being here tonight.
My pleasure.
If we need you again, we'll definitely
just give me a call.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, the next item is our Special Education Efficiency Review from School Services of California. And I know we have 3 representatives here. Thank you for being here. And you have a copy of that presentation in front of you, and Yancey Hawkins will start the conversation.
All right, thank you so much. So in 2017-18, when the Budget Advisory Committee met, they made two types of recommendations. The first is that they helped us with specific budget reductions, and they also gave us some additional recommendations of things to look into. The biggest one was the special education efficiency review. Given the level of complexity and the legal requirements around our special education under the federal IDEA laws, the committee thought it was important for some experts in the field to come in and review our program and to see how we can run a successful, efficient program, and also looking and making sure that we are doing it as efficiently as possible. So in the fall, we engaged School Services of California. School Services of California is the industry leader in California finance and in these kind of reviews. Debbie, Jamie, and Charlene are here from School Services. And so we've got the A team here, so thank you for coming. And about to turn it over to them, but it's not just an efficiency review. Because given the complexity and the importance of special education in our district, it was both a programmatic and a financial review, because those things are so interlocked in special education. So with that, I will turn it over to the school services team, and they and I, as well as Amy Carter, Kelly Johnson, and Nancy Walker, who all did some pretty heavy lifting on this project, will be available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Trustees. Thank you for that warm introduction, Yancy. We appreciate your support. We're here today to discuss the special ed review that you have in front of you that was also attached in your board agenda tonight. And so what we'll go over is really the purpose of our study, what kind of data we collected in order to review the special education information here at the district, as well as the recommendations we make for your district based on what we've seen in other districts in your area and all around the state. So really, we commend the district for having this review. There's been, like Yancy said, a big push or focus on federal compliance, which has really filtered through the California Department of Education, and so really it's important that the study is conducted here. You want to ensure that you're offering your students with disabilities cost-efficient, high-quality programs, and so that is the purpose of our study here at Novato. And so we know that the cost of offering programs to students with disabilities has increased over the years, and unfortunately the funding increase in a cost-efficient manner. And so really, when we looked at your district, we looked at a lot of data, financial data, which also included your collective bargaining agreements and your class size data. We also compared your district to other districts in the surrounding area with similar average daily attendance. So we chose 5 other districts in conjunction with your team members in order to make those comparisons. We also had multiple days of interviews with special education staff and customers of the special education department. And lastly, we sent out an anonymous online survey in order to review the perception of the special education department. Really, the organization of our report goes over the effectiveness of the management in special education, the special education department, really how you're aligning your resources, your staff, your financial resources, and whether those are effective in providing a program that is reducing the number of students with disabilities or moving them throughout the grade levels to be successful. And we also looked at your revenues and expenditures in special education, compared that to other districts in your area, as well as what is common across the state. So Novato Unified is part of the Marin County SELPA. And unfortunately, because it's a member of the SELPA, any decline in average daily attendance within the SELPA means lower funding for your district. At the same time, if your district alone has a reduction in average daily attendance, you also would lose funding from the local control funding formula. So really it's a double whammy for you. You have the potential to lose funding both in your LCFF as well as from your SELPA that you're a part of. And so we know that those special education costs continue to increase. Unfortunately, there's no mechanism in place to increase that funding, no matter how hard we try with, the legislature or, trying to get more special education funding. That hasn't happened. And so your district specifically is contributing 62% of your general fund expenditures towards special education costs. And that just means at squeezing all of your other educational goals. But you have to provide that. That is not a choice, it's required of you.
So I'm going to dive right in and talk about some of the findings and recommendations that we had as a result of our review of the special education programs here at Novato. Currently, there is a coordinator of behavioral health here at the district that specifically focuses on behavior and grants. We recommend that the board consider restructuring that position to make it an assistant director to not only support the area of behavior, but to also support the respective sites and also facilitate the overall structure of the department in terms of developing formal policies and procedures within the department. More importantly, the assistant director would assist the current director in the special education department to handle all the day-to-day operations that the director currently manages within the department, so the director can be freed up to provide a general overview of the department itself. We also recommend that the district consider restructuring the duties and responsibilities of each staff member within a department. We heard from interviews that though the special education department is very helpful in answering questions, sometimes it's difficult to understand who's actually responsible for answering specific areas of special education. So making that clear, who is actually responsible for specific areas of special education, so that when school sites are contacting the district office, they know who to contact. One recommendation that we would like to make is to create a functional organizational chart that ensures that there is that hierarchy, the list of the names of the individuals in the department, as well as their position titles and some major responsibilities that they are responsible for in their day-to-day operations, again, so that anybody can pick up that functional organizational chart and know who to contact within a department. We also recommend eliminating 2 of the program specialist positions and providing an extra position or support as either an assistant director or a coordinator position, again, to provide that support to the school sites in addition to providing that administrative support that would be necessary to, again, ensure that policies and procedures are formalized within the department, but not only within the department, but as well as district-wide from school site to school site. And in developing these formal policies and procedures, we recommend that the district consider confirming that these new policies and procedures are being rolled out to ensure that you are communicating with all staff and holding meetings to give them opportunities to ask questions and get some clarification on these new processes and procedures. And these processes and procedures will only be helpful if staff are held accountable for ensuring that these policies and procedures are consistently applied district-wide. So developing that communication plan to ensure that everyone understands what these new processes are important in the execution of having an effective organization. One example we'd like to point out is that with the student study teams, During our interviews, we've heard that from school site to school site, it's a little different in how students are being referred to special education and what type of interventions are being placed, and that each school site has sort of their own autonomy in making those decisions. So this ties in with the idea of having those formal policies and procedures in place so that then again, those can be executed district-wide. And again, holding the staff accountable for those new policies and procedures. We do recommend that the program specialist of early education does be retained as a full-time position. Currently, that position has a teaching part of its position, and we recommend that that person be devoted specifically to early education with the understanding that they could be supporting higher level grades as well. Additionally, we recommend that the board consider recruiting and hiring for a teaching position to fill in some of that workload that this program specialist currently is doing at a 0.6 full-time equivalent position. And I do want to commend both Kelly and Nancy for the development of how the expenditures of special education is being charged to the special education budget. We talk a lot about Novato and how great of a relationship and communication that you have with fiscal and special education, how important that is and integral in ensuring that nothing is being billed towards a special education budget unless, and we should all notice that it only becomes a special education cost when an IEP is in place. And so we do commend, again, Kelly and Nancy for really doing a great job in doing that. But we like to always include that in our presentation to ensure that the districts continue to maintain that relationship because, again, it is a very integral part in ensuring that special education expenses are only charged to special education when an IEP is in place. Again, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that we're defining roles and providing that clarity for all special education positions. We want to ensure that we are communicating that information to all staff, again, both internally and externally to our external customers and internal customers, so we're all made aware of each other's roles. We also recommend eliminating some of the non-special education responsibilities that the current director of special education is doing currently, such as 504s, for example, and again, with our recommendation of having the board considering an assistant director position for that person to then take on that responsibility for ensuring that the non-special education responsibilities are being taken care of. In terms of tracking pre-referral interventions, the district is doing a good job in tracking some of the data. We do recommend, though, that we take it a step further by ensuring that not only are we tracking the students that are being referred by parents and teachers and the like, but that we are ensuring that we're diving deeper and ensuring that we are tracking it by school site. Right? We want to ensure that in order for the district to have a successful SST process, we need to understand how these students are being referred to the special education programs. And the connection with that is, again, having those policies and procedures in place to ensure that we are properly tracking data and that it's accurate, so that when we are in these SST processes, we can ensure that we understand the impact that it makes in referring those students to special education and the referral rates as well.
So one of the things that we come across often when we're having our interviews with staff is that there is a complete feeling as if there's a lack of training, and we understand that in the fact that we work with educators across the state, and we see, you know, how our teachers and special education staff have been bombarded with trainings through curriculum and Common Core and all of the other areas that are focus areas. But one of the consistent things that we see that is kind of a burden to the special education department is that we're not expanding the training for dealing with students with special needs to our general education side of the house. So our teachers are not prepared to help with those environments when they have several students with special needs in their classroom. What we found here in Novato is that you have some very innovative programs. You're ahead of the game in terms of your social cognition programs. Your staffing levels are really well done, and the students are having good support systems. But we heard a lot about the need for training, and part of that is we are experiencing statewide a whole different kind of student than what we've experienced in the last 15 or 20 years when it comes to students with disabilities. Autism is taking the forefront. We're seeing a lot of behavior issues that we didn't see before, and we need to make sure that our staff are ready and prepared to address those needs. So we want our staff to be trained in addressing those needs. We also want them to be trained in where is the line? When is a student eligible for special education, and when is an intervention appropriate, and what level of interventions? One of the things that the federal government is really taking a close look at, and California has been in trouble. We have a state monitor from the federal government at CDE watching what we do, and that is providing that least restrictive environment. So we have too many students statewide who are in special schools or special programs, county office programs included, and not necessarily being served in their home schools, and that's what the federal government wants to see. So we need to be able to, one, prepare our staff for that, but two, also make sure our programs are set up so that we can offer those environments for our students. And that's going to start at developing those interventions and those policies and procedures around our SST programs so that we have that common language and that common understanding how we can help the kids before they are fast-tracked into special education. Now, I say that here, and I don't intend to imply that your intervention or your SST process is a gateway to special education, because we got mixed feelings about that in our interviews. Some folks felt like it was, and some folks felt like it absolutely wasn't, and that goes to the inconsistency of the application of the policies and procedures. So again, the communication, the consistency of our policies, all of that kind of plays into the overall efficiency of the department. The recommendations that we make for the additional assistant director and coordinator are simply to help implement those processes to do that kind of common education throughout the district so that the programs that you have now that are really working well can be maintained, but we can also support kids prior to them entering special education. We know statewide the largest population of students with special needs is in preschool. We've seen kind of a flattening out in the K-12 arena, but preschool is rising faster. And just for your knowledge base, there is no funding for special education preschool. There is no state funding and just a tiny bit of federal funding. So all of the students that we're trying to serve in our preschool area don't generate any ADA for you. And this is a high cost area, so we really need to focus on the early interventions and early education for our students with disabilities. So when we talk about that, we talk about the multi-tiered systems of support. This is a general education responsibility, not a special education responsibility, but there's an opportunity for both to work together to make sure that we're developing those interventions that are going to be most needed by our most needy population. So when we talk about those intervention strategies, sometimes we talk to people and they feel like, you know, well, I have a reading program, or I have tutors, I have aides, but nothing's helping. The student has some behavior issues, or the student doesn't come to school consistently enough for those interventions to help them attain success in the classroom. And some of those things can't be helped, but we need to make sure that we're providing that base, that training to get through that, and that when we are referring a student to special education, it's because they're not going to be successful in the general education environment, regardless of the numbers of supports we put in that classroom. We also want to make sure, and Charlene alluded to this, that our expenditures are recorded and accounted for in the right place, and we didn't find in your district that they weren't. Oftentimes we do, but again, complimenting Kelly and Nancy for their ability to work together. Just so that you know, we were recently in another district that wasn't doing it well, and we told them, you know, possibly you should call Yancy or Nancy, and yeah, find out what they do, because they're doing it well in Novato. So your name is out there now. We talked to a couple of program specialists who maybe had some confusion about what their contract day is, even amongst themselves. And so we feel like that's something that probably needs to be addressed if we're going to go forward with program specialist positions, that their contract day is either written in their contract or at least codified, so that they have an understanding of what work can be done within their work day. We did find in one area where you have a social cognition class that's in a full immersion campus, and that limits that least restrictive environment for your special needs students to go back out into the classroom. So we really strongly recommend that that program be moved to a campus that students will have more opportunity for that least restrictive environment. We also found that among the social cognition classes in particular, there are capacity in the classrooms. You have a lot of students in the last year that have been transferred to county office programs. The federal IDEA law limits the number of students that can be out of district to 4.4% of your students with disabilities. You have, you're up there over 5. And so you want to look at what that population of students is, why they are going to the county program, and possibly looking at what you can do to build those programs here, because it's very expensive for you to send them off to the county office. And those numbers are continuing to grow, both in the numbers of students and the costs to you. And so when we're looking at an efficiency that can be found, that's probably one of those areas. We made a lot of recommendations throughout our report. We think that you should consider developing an implementation plan for some of those recommendations, those that you agree with, so that we're not trying to do it all at once or too much change, particularly with our students with the most needs. Another area that is very common in school districts is how students with disabilities are finding their way into transportation, and that transportation, once it starts, ends up being a door-to-door or a curb-to-curb type service. And we find, particularly in our older kids, that our goal in special education is to eventually fade services. We want to be able to provide our students with some independence and the ability to get along in life once they're out of school. And we weren't seeing a lot of the fade plans within the interviews that we had. So we have included in our report some criteria that we borrowed from Orange Unified School District, because they had a very good criteria in terms of what an IEP team should go through before they elect transportation for a student with disability. So we do make that recommendation as well. And then the other area that was a little bit concerning was there's funding available to you through the Medi-Cal billing option. And these are people who are working with students and their health needs, and they have to go through a cumbersome process to apply for funding, to track their activities, and it is really quite cumbersome. But those monies are then being allocated based upon what this group of employees decides they want to do with those dollars, and they're not going through the regular process for vetting the expenditures, making sure they fit within the budget. They're not accessible by other areas that might have significant need, and we really think that that should be reviewed and considered as part of it. Those dollars are public funds, and they must go through the same process as all the other funds within the school district. And with that, there was just a few of what those recommendations are. We do thank you for allowing us to come here and use you as a good example for collaboration among special education and business and finance. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Yancy? and then we'll bring it back to the board.
Thank you. And I just wanted to thank school services for all their wonderful work. And to also note that they did an extensive review, and there are additional recommendations within the report. This was a summary of them, but there's some additional ones. But what I forgot to say at the beginning was that we've gotten the draft reports, and we got the final report last week, and our special ed team and our finance team have started working on that right away, and we are going to be bringing an implementation plan in the coming months, likely in May, to which recommendations we think we can implement next year, which recommendations might be more long-term recommendations, and especially looking at all staffing levels and looking how to do it appropriately and efficiently. So, sorry, I should have said that before, but I will open it up for questions for the school services team.
Okay. Trustee Cooper?
Thank you very much, you guys. This is a really, really, really comprehensive analysis, and I appreciate that. I have a couple questions. I guess reading your full report, it almost looks like, as far as the referral process, I'd be curious how, or it would be good for us to, and I know we're going to work on that, but I think identifying what that process is, and if we're over-referring, it sounds like maybe that's one of your findings.
We didn't find over-identification in your numbers of students in terms of the referrals. What we want to see is the SST process is built to decide what interventions need to apply for students before they ever become eligible for special education. So there should be multiple referrals to an SST before a student becomes eligible, and that's the part we didn't necessarily see.
Okay. So that's my misunderstanding then, but I think I would be interested, and I know we're going to take a deep dive in this, but I'd be interested in that. As far, also the cost factor for placing, I'd be interested in looking at if we can bring back any of those students that are down at county that are being offered services by the county back in-house. It sounds like that would be an opportunity. So, yeah, and I think I'm very interested in freeing up some, maybe bringing in another position, assistant director. I don't know how we're going to do that, or how we're going to pay for it, but that seemed very logical to me.
Well, and
probably it's an issue of how that's going to be funded.
Yeah, and we understand the financial difficulty of the whole thing. We really do. And one of the things that I'd really like to say, and I forgot, was that we have a very high contribution to special education from the general fund across the state. And what we hope to help with through the lobbying efforts of the other half of our office is to bring some funding in. We have to recognize locally that it's a revenue problem more than an expenditure problem, right? We just are not getting any funding, particularly for our students in preschools.
Been that way a long time.
Yes,
yeah,
and it's just a growing problem, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Nell.
Thank you for taking the time to come and not only present the report, but share your personal comments and allow us to ask you some questions to understand better what the issue is. There's a couple of questions that came to mind. The first was you identified the number of students by federal statute that are supposed to stay in district, but we're exceeding that number. Too many of our students are being served outside of the district, including served at the Marin County Office of Education. We're clearly above the federal guideline. Did that look like it was a problem that we should be able to reasonably manage, or are we way different than anybody else? Or, I mean, clearly the team's going to take a look at it, but how worried should I be that we're not going to be able to address that issue?
You should be worried if CDE comes, because that's...
I like you guys better.
That's one of the first things that they'll measure. And let me just say that the reason we have federal oversight in CDE is because CDE has not been enforcing that particular statute And that's why they have an overseer. And so now this increased focus on compliance is the pressure that CDE is feeling. So the LRE is the first thing that they measure, and then the second thing is the disproportionality. So in this district, we noticed LRE.
Okay, good. Second question. You identified a general social trend in the state that autistic populations are increasing, but then you said it looks like there's some flattening in the curve. I missed the comment. It looks like at the elementary schools you're not seeing this large, the rate of increase as much as you saw through history. So could you clarify that comment? Because it's
Yes. Okay. So what I was trying to say, and obviously didn't do a very good job, was we're seeing preschool populations of students with disabilities rise, while we're seeing kind of a flattening in the numbers of students with disabilities in the K-12 arena. So it doesn't mean we're losing kids, but we're seeing more of a flattening there year over year. But this population that doesn't generate,
population,
yeah, the youngest ones,
and preschools,
right? And
we're seeing increases.
We're seeing increases, and the behaviors are much different than we used to, consider preschool speech and language. And what we're seeing now are some very significant behaviors. In one district we were recently in, they described a kindergartner who was fast-tracked, and we questioned it. He was fast-tracked from general education to a non-public school within 3 weeks because the teacher described him as feral. So there are these significant behaviors that become safety concerns in the classroom that we're seeing that we didn't see maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
I've heard anecdotal stories like that, and I thought maybe it was just one, but now you've repeated the story, and I would be interested in having our team learn more about not just what's happening in Novato, but the population in California wide, so we can be prepared for what's going to be coming our way. And the third is, you made some comments about teaching transportation. So one of my relatives is 25 years old, autistic, and one of the most important things he learned to do is how to use the bus system and move and manage his own life. And I think that's what you were basically saying, is education isn't just something you do in a classroom. It's about how do you manage your life circumstances. And I would like to comment and thank you for that focus, because in his case, it has been a significant part of his success story.
And it is a significant part of their educational process as they go through some of those transition programs in the upper grades. But my reference was to a dependence that occurs when we have students receiving the curb-to-curb transportation and not working on that independence. That's when it becomes a problem.
And we can sometime over a beer talk about it, but those issues are really important. So thank you very much for the focus. Yep.
Right.
Trustee Nell.
I suppose I gonna have a question in here somewhere, but I did want to start out by thanking you for the work that you guys did. I see school services as a fairly respectable organization that does good work. I happen to be a fiscal report article junkie, so I stop work and I read them, and I probably shouldn't, but so having said that, I think this particular analysis that you've done for us, I think from my perspective is going to come with a lot of respect, and I'm going to be very much interested in seeing how we can work with staff to move ahead with implementing it. And so that brings up, for me, I'm speaking that it's a bit kind of overwhelming to get a 50-page report being compared to other districts and this, do that, change people's jobs, and advice along the lines of how to begin the implementation of these things. I think, Yancy, you said something briefly about we just got the report ourselves, we're looking it over. I've never received a consultation, report, and everyone came to the table and agreed. Actually, we agree on maybe what the issues are, but what to do about them and in what order to do them in and what resources to apply is basically where the work is going to come. So I think we have our hands full as a district in dealing with special education. So I just want to acknowledge that. I really am grateful. For me, this report's a long time coming because it's an area that I think needs constant review and management, considering the fiscal situation and how we're funded, et cetera. So question, the SELPA, when you're the bigger member of a SELPA, sometimes you're basically supporting a lot of other districts because you're providing that efficiency and so forth. So you talked a little bit about our declining enrollment. So are in any way are you suggesting that we should review our participation in the SELPA?
we're not recommending reviewing your participation. What you do participate in is the model in which the budget at the SELPA level is allocated to all of the districts. Your staff here does participate on those conversations, and so we recommend that to continue. The other part of that is that while the SELPA may be declining in enrollment or your district may be declining in enrollment, there are services that you can't afford to provide all of your students with disabilities. You may have one particular student or maybe just a handful with severe needs that can't be serviced here at your district. And so that's when those SELPA services become useful, and that's when it's important to be part of a SELPA. So again, we're not recommending that you review your participation, but just continue those conversations around the allocation of the funding, as well as the services that are provided to meet your students' needs here.
I'm not sure if your scope included an analysis with our participation in the SELPA, but I guess, quite frankly, I mean, do you think we throw our weight around enough in this organization to make sure that we're benefiting?
Okay, now here comes the heavy.
So I know we're in a public sector environment, but essentially, if we're the whale, I would think we would try to do our best to control things.
So San Rafael and Novato are the two largest players in the SELPA. They both have about 7,500 kids of the roughly 33,000 kids in Marin County. So you're talking about 45% of the kids in the county. We do not have 45% of the say. Basically, we have about 2/6 of the vote on the operational the OSC, the Superintendent Steering Committee, but it's 2 out of 6 seats, so it's not significantly out of whack with our population, but it is lower than that percentage. One key factor is our district, as in terms of size, at about 7,500, is about half the size that would be needed to form a SELPA. I believe 15,000 is
15,000 would be
for a single district.
Small SELPA.
Yeah, but you can't have a SELPA under 15,000, I believe.
A regular SELPA is 30.
Yeah. So there are some legal and state level things that would potentially make it very difficult or even preclude us if we wanted to look at other options. Now, within the SELPA and looking at different ways to allocate funds or allocate excess costs or to approve programs, there are absolutely a little bit easier ways to look at that. I know that didn't specifically answer the question of do we throw our weight around enough, but we definitely are very active on, there are 3 committees at the SELPA level: the steering committee, the business committee, and the programmatic committee, and we are very active on that. And given this report, we're going to be even more active in looking at that. And I know the special ed department is going to be, making sure that as they make those referrals to the county office program, that they're being very careful and making sure that, we don't have a program, because we'd rather keep those students close to home with their peers, in the least restrictive environment. So I guess that's.
So I'm just going to assume that the in-depth answer by our assistant superintendent on this is that there wasn't a lot of study of this from school services on this particular issue because you answered my question.
Yeah,
so that answers my question. So thank you. So getting back to the sequence part, I guess then would be, and Nancy, you don't have to sit down because I'm sure everyone's going to want to talk to you here, but so now we're talking implementation, and are we going to continue to employ school services for this process? What kind of follow-up to after we get together and decide and kind of you guys come up with some ideas? Is there going to be some ongoing support, or is this it for now?
So the report is done, but as we implement, we will obviously be working with, because as you know, it was a 50-page report with probably over 50 recommendations when you get into the detailed level. So as we implement, school services will be available to discuss, whether, because we're not going to implement 50 recommendations. Is it going to be 10, 20, 30? We're going to move through those because some of them come with costs, some of them come with cost savings. So we have to make a balance of that. But we will absolutely use the services of school services to help us with that implementation, to ensure that we're not doing, one project when really, if you're going to do that, you really needed to have done 3 of the recommendations. And then they also have the history with districts there's lots of districts who get this report and thank you, put it on the shelf and don't do anything. And then there's lots of districts who really use this as their charge to say, how do I build a better, more efficient program that serves our students better? And so they can help us. The other people to do that would be the other districts who they've seen successful improvements in programs or transformation in programs. And, we would definitely go and speak with those districts as well. So both.
So that's good. Thank you for now.
Thank you. Trustee Millerick.
So a couple of points. One is having school services be too involved in the process, I think, isn't very valuable. We've had that the organization provide reports for us over decades where you've given us a roadmap or a benchmark to work towards, and for the next 5 or 10 years, that's created value. And in the process of you not being here, when you walk in, you always give us a fresh set of eyes on how we're doing. And that value of having them at arm's length, like any auditor, I think is valuable. I wouldn't think it would be, I don't think we need more consultants in this district while we're having the budget conversations. I think we need to do the work ourselves. That's the first point. Second point. We just had a really good conversation about the consequence of having 45% of the kids with an issue, but not 45% of the votes to allow us to steer the policies at the county. And our CFO just described this. I would like to remind this board that we became fiscally independent around this issue 30 years ago when Novato stepped aside and stopped being part of the fiscal model of the district county, and we are a fiscally independent agent. And we did that because we were on this side of the curve, and it was clear that that was the wrong place for this district to be. We needed to be on the side where we can control our own fiscal destiny. So there's been a couple of times when at this table we've talked about stepping away from fiscal independence. Next time we have that conversation, I'm going to have Yancey come up and tell the same exact story about what it's like to be on the wrong side of the fence on that conversation. There's a very good reason Novato goes its own way on many issues where our large size is used to help a lot of other people, but we don't get the benefit directly to us. So just a marker. Next time we have the meeting, I'll bring it up again.
Well, and if I could just add to that, as far as the SELPA goes, the law is very clear. You only get, 1 vote per district, regardless of the size. So your hands are tied in terms of the SELPA. Sorry.
It was anybody's fault.
Yeah.
I just said that's the consequence. And so we don't get fiscally served well sometimes.
That's right.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll move on. So to school services, thank you to the three of you for putting this together and being here tonight to present it. It was important to this board, and I'm glad you're here. So thank you very much. We don't take this as this is what you're doing wrong, but this is how you can serve students better. And that's important, and take care of our staff in the meantime. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Why? What happened? Oh yeah. You're right. Yeah.
My analysis.
All right, moving on. Leslie Benjamin is going to present her communications and community engagement update, and another update additional update with Target River and their progress that they've made.
Thank you, President Butler. Leslie Benjamin, Director of Communications and Community Engagement. Where's this thing here? Okay, I'm going to give an update on the district's communication plan and also how we're doing with Target River, the marketing company that we contracted with in February. To start with, I want to share with you, we have multiple platforms that we use to reach our community, and that includes our staff, our students, and our general community members. And we've got our website page, and we have community meetings like the State of the District and the kindergarten registration night that really works to bring in all of our stakeholders. And then we've got the newspaper, of course. I put a couple of headlines in, not headlines, but some fun things that we've had that turned out in the paper. And then our social media with Facebook and Twitter, and below that is our YouTube page, and then Instagram. And then another way that we reach our parent community is through our formal newsletters on Market Vault, and we've expanded this year beyond the superintendent's newsletters page, but also the education services and special education. I also have FANS, Food and Nutritional Services, that we started this year because I was getting some recipes that we were sharing with our community. I don't know if you got the one about carrots. It was pretty good. Let's see. Highlights this year. I don't know if you knew, but that Novato Unified was honored at the National School Public Relations Association Conference last July for their new branding and image package. I submitted us, and so we got an honorable mention for that. I thought was pretty good. We're a pretty small district compared to districts nationwide when you're looking at ones that are like 70 to 120,000 people, kids and stuff like that. But also we brought Schoolmint on board this last summer and fall to digitally transform our parent forms, our back-to-school forms, our new student registration and transfer applications, making it easier and faster for families to complete and submit forms. And this year what was new was we streamlined, we live streamed the lottery on Facebook Live. It was about 45 minutes, and so as we were streaming it, we were getting questions from parents, and so we were able to answer it right away. And then we posted the video, so if they wanted to go back and look at it, they could see where their students, but then with Schoolmint, we were able to let them know their wait list number on Monday. It was fabulous. And on the corner there, we did a little intro. Amy Carter did a little intro on what the lottery was doing too. And another highlight was that we reinstated the board meeting highlights, and some of the schools are starting to use Market Vault more, which I think is really great because it ties into our ARIES student information systems. They're able to use the most recent or the more up-to-date student email addresses. Whoops. 3. Okay. I'm all messed up here. But forgive me. A big addition this year was our use of videos, and we continued to highlight our employees through the Modeling the Way videos, and so we did about, I think, 23 of those. But we also added Superintendent Hogaboom's What's Up Wednesday, all of which have really added to our social media presence. Our likes were up 30. This is just from last September. They're up by 38% in Facebook. Twitter's 9%. Instagram's 73%, which I attribute a lot to Target River. And another highlight, well, and we did 44 newsletters. And our average open rate, it's not bad. English at 40% and Spanish 35%. That's pretty good. And we did reduce the spending this year, primarily we finished our contract with Kiosk, and the Youth Truth Survey was funded through the Haas Foundation and the Marin Community Foundation. But I want to move on to Target River. We've contracted with Target River in February. They're a target marketing firm at the recommendation of the Elementary School Size Committee to market the benefits and highlights of our schools with the idea that this would attract new students and retain current students. So as of last Thursday, March 28th, Target River reported a total of over 1 million impressions. And those are online views or ad views that show up on people's web page. And so it's a particular advertisement. So they created, and I wanted to show you the landing page that they have. That they created. So on the next slide, I'll show you like a snapshot of what their ads mean, but all of the ads have something about learn more. And the learn more goes, oh, it didn't do that. There we go. So when an interested community member is interested in more, they hit the learn more and they come to this landing page, which, you know, their name, telephone number, email, what grade the child will be in the next school year, learn more. That either that goes to an email that comes to me, and then I follow up with the leads. And then also on this landing page, there are information about the Novato Unified Schools, the video that they did, the 30-second video that they did, and some highlights and sort of next steps if they wanted to call. If they didn't fill out above, they could call here, and then a listing of all of our schools. And then the YouTube video that they did, that has gotten over 294 impressions. And if you recall, let's see if this is going to work. Is that a good number or bad number? It's a good, they're all good numbers.
Unified School District, we engage, inspire, and empower all students. Our campuses are environments where children thrive as we prepare them to face a rapidly changing world and realize their life goals. The qualified and caring staff of Novato Unified Schools work with each student in our safe learning environment with small class sizes. We offer the latest in technology, dual language immersion, career pathways, strong academics, and a variety of extracurricular activities. Explore all we have to offer at Novato Unified.
Right, and if you notice on our website, we've got that video playing on the home page, not the sound, but we've got the video playing on in the back, so that was really good. And then the display ads, another over 500,000 impressions. And so here on the left-hand side are a couple of screenshots I took from my phone, what the ads look like that go to that landing page, and then the information comes through. Here's examples of the Facebook and Instagram impressions, and those are really, I see those coming through, and people are liking them and commenting on them, and I think that's also helping drive our social media presence as well. And they've also done direct mail pieces, over 9,000 direct mail pieces. I know that some have gone to Petaluma. There's been some newspaper ads, and then we've had 100 yard signs that they sent us. And so I took a couple of photos around the community of where those are at as well. So what does all this mean? It means that we get leads, and they come in. There's my telephone, and I make phone calls. And I want to thank Emmy McCall, Carmen Morena, and Susie Hirschfield. They help me with the calls that are in Spanish. So when the lead comes in, it says Spanish lead or it says English lead, and so then I know where to direct it. And of the people that we've talked to so far in the context that we've had, 4 have been young children, babies. You know, people are anxious about that. 24 in pre-K, of which I forwarded to the YMCA so they can follow up, because we have the 4 preschools at campuses. 10 are TK, 13 kindergarten, and 15 that are in grades 1 through 7. So what does all that mean? And the questions are, what are the results? What, are we getting more families into NUSD? And it's difficult to quantify at this time. However, what I can tell you of the people that I've been talking to, I've identified about 6 families who said they're going to be enrolling in our schools, and another 3 that were interested in inter-district transfers from another district. And Brian Epperson, who's the CEO of Target River, who came here earlier this year, said he's quite pleased with the campaign so far. Over 1 million impressions, about 120 leads and counting. Great exposure with the newspaper ads, emails, and direct mail. And we still have 2 full months to go.
All right, nice, great. Board, Trustee Gasson, Trustee Millerick, Trustee Aguila.
I'm just going to say thank you for everything you're doing.
Sure.
And I personally love the board highlights that you put out. You know, I'm a big Facebook person, and I think it's just a nice, easy reminder to people and an easy way to get caught up on things. So I appreciate all that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Great. Trustee Millerick?
Not only does this effectively put us in front of a population who is in the decision-making process, which is the sales opportunity, but we periodically go back out to the community and ask the community to support us in the programs that we use to deliver, either in the form of parcel taxes or school fuels, tour of Novato, many activities where the community's participation is important for us in a sense way greater than just the 118 leads. This is thrilling, and I'm glad to see that they're monitoring their work so close and helping us and tuning it up. And as they pointed out, you're only a third of the way done.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. Thank you very much for orchestrating this process.
You're welcome.
Trustee Aguila?
So we spent 50K on this campaign, and I just want to make sure that the board, we're the board, we're holding Target accountable for as far as making sure that his promises are being kept. By this, that we could see that we're moving forward. This is a great job, and so with the 6 families that have reached out to you, to get the 50K back, if they come to us, I'm just thinking, how many families or people, students we would need to have in order to get the 50K back, and then bring more families into the school district, and just to see, like, are you the only person that is keeping track of, and if so, that's okay, but I'm just curious, keeping track of how many people are actually, how are we keeping Target accountable for, and maybe accountable is not the right word, but how are we measuring the success of Target? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, if I recall when Mr. Epperson came in, there's no guarantees. And he said it's sort of difficult to really quantify it. And at this time, what we can do in the fall, see, right now all of our student registrations in Schoolment, and the only way to search that is really through, it's a different platform. It's through student names. With Target River, I have parent names, so I can't search through all those new registrations. I think in the fall, what we can do is see if any of those parent names match up with any of the names in our database, and see if that's it. That's the closest we can get to really, and so I have that information. I have a spreadsheet on that.
Yeah. And yes.
One of the other part of your question was how many kids. And so there's a couple different ways to look at that. It's 5 kids for 1 year, or 1 kid for 5 years. So we get a kindergartner into our system. We have them in our system for 13 years. Well, that's 13 times $11,000. So we're way ahead. It's over time. Or we get 5 kindergartners that show up for 1 year, and we're ahead that way. So there's a couple different ways to look at it.
Yeah.
just I just wanted to make sure that, we also keep the community informed, because here we are, with struggling with money, and as soon as we see the success of Target and that we get our 50 back, that we let the community know that in some way that we did the right choice that night when we voted for Target. And then the other thing I mentioned, but I don't think I brought it up, is can we bring into some of our schools in the applications at the beginning of the school year, if you look at the students coming into the schools at the beginning of the school year as a business, let's just say, most businesses say have a small question in the application. How did you hear about us? And is there a way that we can put that somewhere where where we know how they're hear from us?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah. Well, we do the back to school forms and everything like that. I mean, that's possible. I think most people would say I live in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's
that's sort of what I think about is if I was a parent and they asked me how did I hear about the school district, I would say, well, I mean, so I don't
neighborhood school.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure what message that might send to them. But it's something that we can certainly look at and explore. Maybe there's another way to go about it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know how, but just I'm just mentioning it because a way to again make sure that that Target is, that we are getting results.
Well, I think just the number of impressions. I mean, target marketing and digital electronic marketing is not my area of expertise, but I know that is really a growing area that a lot of people pay attention to, and they're really doing it, and it's very measurable. So I think when we hear like over 1 million impressions in, I want to say 6 weeks, that sounds about right. I mean, I think that's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And I also wanted to congratulate you on the videos, and a lot of the videos were translated into Spanish. Very well translated, and I think we're moving forward.
We are. We
Right
have some
direction.
EL videos coming out probably in a month or so.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Trustee Aguila, or Trustee Gasson?
I don't see Yancey here, but one of the things that when I've asked him about that, or is he back there somewhere? Just to go to the count is just keeping that number from continuing to decline. That's another, it's not a quantifiable amount, but keeping it so that that number of how many kids we have doesn't continue to decline indirectly reflects a positive attitude about the school, or, that we're not going to continue to lose students, but seeing a smaller decline than anticipated would also indicate some success.
Mm-hmm. And I think just getting the exposure out there, I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things coming up in the next few years, so really putting showing off our great district in a different way than we have in the before is a positive too.
Trustee Cooper?
Thank you, Leslie. I'm always impressed with your work on the website. I think we have a nice mix of Jim's message, budget messages, and
thank you.
The board highlights that you mentioned. I guess I have a question about the Target River and how we can sustain that. We're clearly not going to keep paying them, but would it be a good opportunity maybe for a high school student to do an intern? We've got a lot of pretty smart kids in some of our high schools.
Well, we just had Marin Oaks come here with their Bridges program, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there.
Give them direction and say, here's your charge, and let's see what
I'm wondering. I also wonder, as you were speaking, if there's an opportunity for like a Marin Oaks student to partner with somebody like at MSA or at San Marin who's into film or videoing.
Perfect.
And doing something like that.
Collaboration.
Exactly. So I mean, I can explore that and see if there's
awesome.
any interested students.
So we're getting the benefit. They're getting a benefit. Clearly, we're getting the benefit of sustaining that program and benefiting the district as a whole. So cool.
You can
Yeah.
All right, if there's no further, I just have one. How do we get in front of the realtors? Have we been able to get to that at all? I know that's been a tough one. They don't meet monthly anymore, if I
No, but you know, I know they meet here from time to time, but
How do we get in front of them on its own? And, you know.
When I went to the California School Professionals Conference in early March, late February, I went to a workshop on realtors. So I'll go back through my notes and dig that out and see.
It's not an easy one, but maybe we can find something.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That would be great.
The real estate market's moving online more and more, so there may be opportunities that exist now that didn't exist 5 years ago.
Put a link to our district website on a house for sale.
Ooh,
Well,
that's a great idea.
You got a whole box of signs. Every time you see it, if it's for sale sign, just go and put that in front.
Put the
engage, inspire, and
hey, that's not a bad idea. Okay. Thank you, Leslie, very much.
You're
This was a
welcome.
great report, and continue to provide that every year. We'd appreciate it. Okay, moving on to our discussion action items. This is an important item. This is ratifying our tentative agreement with our CSEA, California School Employees Association, and settling our negotiations.
Yeah, it's always
Koska?
always the favorite time about negotiations is when you get to settle negotiations. So we had a good process with CSEA. At the end of the day, we came to an agreement. The general percentages of the agreement for the NFT agreement and the CSEA agreement were very similar. Both were approximately 2.5% settlements. In the CSEA agreement, we did a little bit less manipulations of the salary schedule. We did add a longevity step at the top for 28 plus years of service. And so the increase that we added to the salary schedule was approximately 2.25%. So about 2.25% to the salary schedule, and then the cost of adding that longevity step at 28 plus was another 0.25%. So total cost of the settlement about 2.5%. You can see that the costs for the next 3 years are included here. And again, this represented really good work between us and CSEA, and I can't wait to start negotiations again. So it's the superintendent and staff's recommendation that we ratify the tentative agreement with CSEA to settle negotiations for 2018-19.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, or we can move on this item? Trustee Aguila?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. We have a first by Trustee Aguila, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Okay. And the item next to follow is always our AB 1200. Okay. So first by Trustee Miller and a second by Trustee Cooper. Any comments from Yancy? We're pretty familiar with this as a board, and
No, I just think it's important to note the decisions that we're going to have to make in the future as it relates to these agreements and our other increasing costs.
right. I think this board's well aware of that.
Absolutely.
So, all right, so we have a first by Trustee Miller, a second by Trustee Cooper. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. And then this is our unrepresented group.
Hi. Long time no see. So as we conclude negotiations with NFT and CSEA, we get to work with our non-represented groups. That includes our classified supervisors and coordinators, our confidential employees, our occupational therapists, our certificated management group, and then the classified management group. So what we did here is, in this case, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So what we did here was, if a group of employees looked more like classified employees, then they received the 2.06% increase. Wherein if they looked a little bit more like the certificated employees, then they received the 2.06% increase. And so the way that fell is our classified supervisors and coordinators received the 2.25% and the additional longevity step at 28. Our confidential employees received the 2.25% plus an additional longevity step. Since they didn't have a 25, which the other classified employees had, we added that we added the step 25 instead of a step 28. Our classified occupational therapists, they have to have a certificate in order to be able to do their work, so we felt like they looked more like the certificated employees, and so they received the 2.06% and no longevity, similar to what we did with NFT. Certificated management, again, looks more like our teachers. They have to have a certificate to do their work, so they received the 2.06% and no longevity. And then the same went for classified management. Mostly I did that because I didn't want Yancey to get a bigger raise than Amy. So that's how we evened that out. So again, you have the costs there for this year over year. And so the staff recommends an approval of the 18-19 compensation agreement for all unrepresented groups, including classified supervisors and coordinators, confidential employees, occupational therapists, certificated management, and classified management.
Okay.
I'd move approval.
I'll second that.
We have a first by trustee Cooper, a second by trustee Nell. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. Okay, and then what I want to follow is the 3 consent items. These were the salary schedules that I pulled. If we could just go through those. These 15K is the consent item. It's approval of the updated salary schedule for classified staff. So, okay. First by trustee Millerick.
I'll second.
Second by trustee Nell. Again, this is approval of the updated salary schedule for our classified staff. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. 15L is approval of updated salary schedule for unrepresented groups. And each salary schedule is represented.
Approval of 15L unrepresented.
Okay. First by trustee Millerick. Second by trustee Nell. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent.
You want to do the next one?
M is approval of updated certificated management substitute pay schedule. So this is updating. Okay. First by trustee Millerick, a second by trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. Okay. Thank you, board members, for getting that through that. And now we will move. Yeah. Moving on to the discussion action. This is the PE policy coming back to us. And Amy Carter is presenting this.
Coming back to you. So just by way of a refresher, I was here on September 18th, and we talked a little bit about that every year we get these applications for waivers from outside athletes, that really we have an inconsistent process, and we felt like this was something that we wanted the board to weigh in on. You know, because of the complexity of this topic and that there's so many views around it, we really appreciate the board's willingness to interface with us over the last 8 months and help us get to where we are tonight. And then after that September meeting, we at the board's request, had a PE discussion group and task force where we brought in different stakeholders to really look at this issue and have some conversation. They presented on December 18th, and at that point the board was clear that inaction was not an option, that we're really looking for a system solution around this issue. So we went back to the drawing board with the feedback from the board. The task force in their conversations had really talked about the merits of waivers versus PE credits, and you know, if we have students that are demonstrating mastery in this area and in their physical education commitment to their health, that, you know, wouldn't it make sense to award them for that demonstrated mastery? And that's really reflective of, you know, more our thinking as a system. And so then our conversations evolved into looking at a solution to award PE credits for both our athletes who play out with our jerseys on their backs and those individuals that we see applying a lot of hours outside of the district for sports which are not offered in NUSD. The board was clear that was an element that was important to anything that we put together. So our athletic directors, and I really have to commend Michelle and Dennis, have put in a lot of hours in this. They've had a lot of conversations. We've had a lot of great input from our physical education educators, and they've come up with a solution that they feel is comfortable moving forward. And I'm going to let Dennis kind of share with you their solution.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Excited to see you guys again. Coming a lot to these things, so it's getting fun. I got into teaching so I can come to board meetings, so that's fun. So yeah, as Amy was saying, I appreciate her efforts in this. Big shout out to the PE teachers who helped kind of draft. So I think in your agenda packet, you guys had two different things. As I read through the policy that's there, I was just telling Amy Carter also that if we, my belief is that if we adopt this P2 second year PE option, which we all kind of all agreed that the freshmen would take their traditional PE class that we're doing, that's kind of been standard, and then add this as a second year course that would include our athletes would be able to take this course and outside athletes would be able to take this course, that I don't know that we need to change the board policy, right? Because it's not, we're no longer exempting them from PE. We're providing an option for them to get PE credit. So I think the PE teachers would feel more comfortable not having it as a way for them to opt out, but rather providing this course, which is kind of what you said, because it, if you look through, it has like some key like assessments and assignments that they would take throughout the course of the year and kind of have checkpoints throughout the year. So the way that the class that we designed was an independent study course in which kids that are either athletes on our school or athletes outside would say, I want to take this course. It's obviously a little bit easier for us to verify the students who are taking our own sports teams. That would just be a simple talk with the athletic director from whoever the teacher of the course is and says, did they play the sport? Yes. And then they would turn in their assignments throughout the year. Outside sports, there would be more of an application process, which would require like proof of insurance, kind of like a waiver of the parents to say, I know that they're at Novato gymnastics or they're at rowing or whatever they're doing. That way the district's not held liable for that. So it is a little bit more paperwork. But once they're enrolled in that class, that they would follow the same pathway as any other student. So they would meet with whoever the assigned teacher is several times throughout the year as check-ins to make sure they're still on track and they're doing the assignments that they were doing. So yeah, so I think as the P department, which I was kind of trying to be a liaison for them also, was that we wanted to kind of maintain the integrity of what the PE teachers are already doing. And I think that this course does that. And then I think we just have to figure out how it would be staffed in terms of, we'd like to see it taught by PE teachers, but yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So any questions?
No, just kidding. All right, board members, Trustee Gila.
Yeah. So when my nephews were at San Marin, they didn't take one of the classes that they wanted to take with PE because they didn't have the health insurance. They were here from Finland, and so that they kind of slipped through that process, and because they weren't unable to do that. So so you're saying that this would be a way for those who don't have insurance or those who are immigrating here and don't have insurance, that would be able to do that?
No, I'm assuming that any outside, like to play our sports, you'd have to have insurance, and there are like ways for people to get like athletic coverage, right? And so there's low cost options that we can make available. Yeah. But I'm assuming that anybody that goes to another sport, that they would have to be covered through some type of insurance, and that I wouldn't be able to say what those outside organizations do for insurance. But it's I I can't speak for sure for that.
Right, that's what I thought, but I wanted clarity because I wasn't clear. Yeah, thank you.
All right, we have a blue card, so I'm gonna have the community member, or actually teacher and parent, Mariah Fisher, come up and speak to this item. Hi.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking to this, but I just want to advocate for our special ed students. My son is a resource student, and I foresee challenges getting him to be college ready. Resource period every day, and getting those A to G requirements in. He swims with Riptide, has since he was Riptide Juniors, being 4 years old. He's autistic. So asking him to switch teams is not going to happen. He will not swim for San Marin. He will swim at Riptide. And I just wish that there was a little flexibility both for our special ed students and our EL students. When you have to have a period of intervention and resource, it really limits your access to electives. So if he could swim with Riptide, get his PE units in that way, it opens up a period for him and for all resource students. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Something we need to think about. Trustee Millerick.
I guess I'd like to have, not right now, but get some information from her about how IEPs work and how that it's possible to address these individual issues.
Right.
Yep. I mean, I don't think it's the general case, but it's certainly an important case for this parent.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. So the IEP team gets to look at each child individually and figure out the best needs for that child. So your IEP team will actually, and if in their discussions they feel like that's the appropriate way to go about that, this is a mechanism that would sort of open up that opportunity for your child. But definitely that IEP team can really be nimble around some of these organizational structures to make sure that we're honoring, you know, the fact that there's a special challenge there. So bring that up with your IEP team and you should be able to find a solution.
Okay, so what I'm, just for the board, just to go back, so the staff is asking for approval of the second reading of the policy and is asking for potential approval of the independent study contract that they've put together or outline. And if you have any questions, changes, comments, please speak now for that. On page 4 of the policy is where the new items, where that has changed. Everything else has remained the same from when we previously got the policy. So it's items 4 and 5 on page 4. It says new policy, and you'll see that it says independent study in physical education programs if you're on a sponsored sports team is number 4, and the same thing if you are outside doing a training regimen, rigorous training regimen, or doing another sport outside of the school sports. So I'll speak where I am right now. When we left the last meeting in December, the way I read it was we need to do more work on how we handle students doing an MCAL sport. I'm just going to say MCAL, meaning a school sport. We need to do a much better work. We have now full-time ADs. We could do a much better job of making sure we're tracking those students, that they're following all the regulations to be able to play that sport, that they're making their credits and everything, filling out all the paperwork and all that. So I thought that's where I left it. And then that we were going to develop something. I was in favor of developing this like independent study so that a student can take an outside sport such as rowing or mountain biking, gymnastics, and be able to get that PE credit is what I was looking for. So I am not, right now, I'm not in favor of this independent study program for a student taking an MCAL sport at the school. I mean, for me, these kids are now already in high school. They've had PE every day since kindergarten or whatever it is, first grade. I don't want to say that you have to do this. If I was, I'd be like, you're crazy. A student's not going to be happy with this. I'm sorry, they're just not. I could see holding somebody who's not part of an MCAL sport, holding them accountable with this program, absolutely, with this independent study. But to have a student, like I said, at the school taking an MCAL sport and trying and using their PE waiver for that, let them do that, but they should not have to do this independent study course. I'm just not in favor of that right now. So that's my personal view on that. So we need some. Trustee Nell.
Well, this, thank you guys. And I'm going to assume that we're all here. This report is coming from the committee. So there's enough unison behind it, I guess, that it's being brought forward with a recommendation to adopt it. My biggest struggle is the accountability, liability, and a fiduciary responsibility that we have when we're going to assign PE credits to a student who's participating in a program we have absolutely no control over. So I think I said that's going to be a tough one for me to get there, but I want this to work. I'm trying to say, look, guys, there's obviously some need out there, but just because, you know, flexibility and there's case-by-case situation, flexibility is a good thing, but not if it risks our liability and eliminates our ability to maintain fiduciary responsibility to these graduate credits. So right now I want to take it on, somewhat faith that you guys have come up with an idea. There's a way to proceed, and that if we could approach this maybe from a piloting perspective, because the first thing, I mean a little tongue in cheek, but the first time that I see a Photoshop photograph of a kid's face on some obscure rowing team that he's theoretically participating 400 minutes in, that's going to make all of us really look bad. And I don't want to burden the PE department or the athletic directors with running down proof and evidence that these students are performing outside of our own controlled environment. So I have a lot of issues around that still, and then there's the whole idea of who is going to take responsibility for saying, yes, that swimming program is acceptable. Does that mean if it gets accepted at Novato High, it's okay, but the PE department head at San Marin says, no, I don't like that swimming program, I don't think it's acceptable? So then is it a site-by-site decision? Because this policy reads that way to me.
Right, and I think what I was saying is like the policy, I think if you have an independent study program, I think that the policy that are in here is under as waivers, and I don't think we need it as a waiver. If it's an approved course, then a student could take this course without having to have a thing, and then that would kind of, and the way the course was designed, but I think it was still school site by school site, in which like the department chair and the athletic director. I would envision if it was in place, and again, I agree with you that I don't know if it's the best thing, but we tried to make out something because that was what the board directed us to. But I share your concerns about dishonesty and people trying to do that. But
exaggeration and yeah.
Right. And so, but if a student did apply for this, I could see there being like an application process, and maybe like once a year, there's a group, whether it's both athletic directors and both PE chairs would meet in May or whatever for students that want to take it for the following year, and there would be a joint that would look at all the applications and either approve or deny. I think there should be some uniformity, and not, it would be unfair to make it case by case and have the principals, like what you might have a principal who's an expert in one thing, and not like we're pretty fortunate at San Marin where our principal's coached high level sports and he understands it, but you might have a principal who doesn't know a lot about it and they don't know that. So having some sort of like committee that meets and with some direction from, even if a board member was on it or something, to where there's a clear who's in and who's out. But yeah, like I said, I don't think it needs to be a waiver. If it's an approved course, then you would have control over who takes it and who doesn't.
Yeah, to me, it was a sort of creative way to come up with this independent concept instead of a waiver.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to let the board know that
Go ahead.
we actually have this mechanism operating in place in our system right now. We do have Fuel Ed. Kids can do an online course where they submit activity logs and they do learning activities around their health. So that mechanism already exists and is considered valid in our district. So, you know, that's another sort of option for these students. I think we are trying to sort of look at something focused particularly on the athletes, but we have that mechanism in place, and there are online high schools and BYU Independent Study where it really is this model where you're submitting those activity logs and doing some learning activities. I think we're trying to, you know, put kind of the Novato brand on that, but it's a mechanism that it does exist, and it's quite common in high school. Yes. Yep. So we don't use it that way, but we do award a second-year PE credit for individuals who do the activity logs, do the online activities. So, you know, I think if you gave us the direction to figure out the solution, we'd kind of go back to the drawing board, figure out what was cost efficient and what wasn't too burdensome for our athletes. But
Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Cooper.
We had a conversation at this board table about making up credit recovery programs, and the question I had at the time was, are we using any online instruction, you know, video or like it's happening at colleges, University of Phoenix and others? And the answer is yeah, and in Nevada we are doing that in some areas. Not every high school student attends every class physically on campus. There are occasions, small few, where in fact the course is completed using some other model, like video conference or something. And this starts to me looking similar. This is you know, if you have to come and physically stand in front of me to do your coursework model is changing in America. It's changing in the world. How we control this to make sure that we don't, Trustee Nell's concerned that we don't just get frauded, and actually the student cheats themselves because they don't get the learning experience, or they do some work and that somebody else did and turn it in, and you have a way to make sure it's not fraud. I think all of those concerns start wrapping around this. I think we need to start thinking about ways to get credit outside of standing in front of a teacher. And what that looks like, this is just the little piece. And I'm concerned about all of the integrity issues and the administrative cost issues. But I think it's, in 2019, it's time for us to start looking at ways to award credit, but we need to make sure WASC teams are on board. We need to make sure CDE teams are on board, because we're walking into an area that could get really ugly really fast. And it wouldn't be here in this district, but if we get wrapped up into a problem that's occurring in some district who's intentionally understaffing their classes and trying to balance their budget by having work at home, I think we got a problem. So I like this idea, but I think we need structure around it. And I'm not sure, right now tonight I wouldn't vote for it because I'm not comfortable with the structure. I need to know how that works. And I'd look towards our academic leaders, Chris and Superintendent, to come back and say, yes, this is a sound educational model, not just for athletics, where somebody decides, you know, they go out and swim a mile in San Francisco Bay every morning. Clearly they're doing the job, but there's others where that may not be so clear. So I'm really curious about this, and I haven't been historically, but I am now. Yeah.
Trustee Cooper.
So I guess on principle, I'm in agreement with this, and I would be, you know, the idea. Trustee Nell mentioned something about possibly a pilot. That might not be a bad thing, and I might support that. The only concern I have, or one of the concerns I have, is the accountability piece. And so there's something has to be verified by approved qualified individuals, quote unquote. And who's that? What's that? So that's a concern, and So I would almost, and the committee, who was on this committee that kind of drafted this? You were?
The original part, Michelle Sander, myself, 3 or 4 different PE teachers. We had some parents, some coaches. That was kind of when we first started it. And then the draft of the course was Mr. Philpott and what's her last name? I can't think of her name. Jessica Stanton at Novato. So that one PE teacher from each school, because they were the experts in the area of the course. So
maybe just go back to maybe go back to the drawing board a little bit. But I think with respect to that committee, it would be good. Let's make sure so we don't look in the mirror and say, oh, shoot, we didn't include this group or whatever. So, but overall, I like this. I think it's it's a vehicle to solve a problem that we have. So those are my comments.
Trustee Gasson.
Just quickly, I wanted to say thank you. I don't have or haven't had high school kids yet, so I don't get the full appreciation for all this. But what I did get out of it was that I felt like it was a step in the right direction in listening to parents about having a choice. And I thought this was a good way to start looking at offering something separate, what happens at each school. And one of the things that stuck out during the special education presentation was that things are inconsistent across our elementary schools. And I'm just seeing some other things too. And what I would like to see, whatever is implemented, is it's the same at both. Whatever the process is or whatever gets, if this is an approved person or whatever, that it's the same at both locations, so that we do have the same and consistent offerings or whatever implementation at both locations. So that's all.
All right. Yes.
Do we, and I think the answer is yes, but I don't actually know for a fact. Do we still do motion in Novato at the beginning of every school day in every elementary school?
Elementary, yeah.
Every elementary school. They go drink lattes.
It's close. It's close to almost every school doing in motion in the mornings. Yes.
So yeah, okay. But so the notion of physical fitness begins at pre-K.
Right.
The model used to be, well, when you got to high school, you had to be athletic, and we lost middle school athletics in the 70s when the budgets got cut with Prop 13, and we're putting them back in our schools where physical health matters if you're a kindergartner just as much as if you're a high school athlete. And that part, and I wish they were happening at the middle schools too, but that part of physical health as part of our curriculum, not a course you have to take, but as part of your daily routine, is important. With that in place, it matters less to me that we have these high school courses, because by the time you get to high school, you should have a personal habit of well-being. And so my mind is changing some about how we do this. And then maybe at high school you do go rowing or mountain biking, or you do something that is, an athletic endeavor, a physical health endeavor that's not just the school sport.
Right. And I think the one thing that you were the one that brought up last time is that as a PE person and an athletic person, that you have to acknowledge that there is some difference between a physical education course and the learning that goes on, as opposed to being on a sports team. And so the more that we just say doing a sport meets physical education, you're kind of just, it's to me, I always use the equivalent of, like, if I go to a book club every Thursday, can I get English credit? Like, I read a whole bunch of books and I talked about English, but I didn't do the full encompassing of what it means to be in a high school English classroom. So I just want to make sure that we're not completely muddying the waters between playing a sport and learning the knowledge part. And so when we built this course, we took kind of 5 of the major things so that learning component's still part of it. So they're not completely undermining the physical education teachers or the coursework.
Well, that's the same point that was made here 20 years ago when we talked about this same thing. This is by the same people sitting in this audience.
Yeah, right.
Groundhog Okay, so from what I'm hearing, just from the board overall, there's still some, not confusion, but uncertainty about what's been presented. That the accountability, it seems to be somewhat of how are we going to hold everybody accountable for this? Personally, I think that's the AD's this is your part of your job, and I hold you accountable to follow through on the steps to make sure our athletes are meeting the requirements of this independent study.
Well, I would say our athletes are.
Yes. Yes, that's what I said. Even though I disagree, and I apologize if I came out abruptly, but you're going to get my honest opinion on
no,
things.
I totally respect that, and I'll give you the same.
Yeah.
I respect you guys enough to do that. But I think what Trustee Noah was saying, that he's worried not so much about our athletes, not liability, it's the liability of the outside people, which I as an AD have no control over.
Right. So what would the board, can we, with the policy, if we moved on the policy, does that help in any way?
Yeah, so what that does for us is now, because we are in the middle of registration and we're helping kids sort of plan their schedule, that opens the door for us. We can still do a lot of workshopping on our end to get something that is meeting that level of rigor and expectation. But, you know, we're kind of at a point where we'd really like to at least know that we can start heading that way, and then we've got the remaining months to really get it pinned down.
So approving the policy with the 4 and 5, you have here on page 4, you have new policy.
Yes.
You want that included in the approval?
Yes, and I think Dennis's point is, you know, since it is just sort of an independent study PE2 course, maybe we don't need to codify it, but I think just, you know, for our system, I leave that to the board as to whether you want to move forward to codify that.
You need some guidelines.
Yeah.
And that's what we will do. So what you're doing is you're creating the mechanism. The mechanism doesn't exist right now, but you're creating that. And then on the back end, Dennis and Michelle and our PE teachers will figure out the smartest way to go about that.
And I would, I would suggest that, like any course description, you have learning outcomes that are specific, and they may be relevant to physical well-being, or they may be relevant to sportsmanship, or they may be, I mean, you guys are going to choose. They may be relevant to lifelong health maintenance. I don't know what they are, but I think if you frame it in a typical Essler-Wask kind of model, it will.
The state standard.
Yeah, you know better than I.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would just say in my. And I think just the policy, as I said before, the policy as written isn't specific to high school. It's not specific to second year PE. It's kind of, again, the same. It was kind of the same thing that was brought the first time. That was just very vague and open. So I think if we get an approved course, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you have an approved course, you don't need a board policy to allow this. If it's a course that our students are allowed to take.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that I feel uncomfortable with this policy written, because it's not specific to anything. It's just as vague as the first time we brought it. I think the course that you have is 90% done, and we need to figure out kind of what that application process looks like, the liability piece, what that looks like, and those type of things to make it a course that a high school student could take if they're playing an MCAL sport, or they could take it if they're doing a sport that we don't offer, right? And so it wouldn't be required of our student athletes, but it's a course that would be available for them to earn credits for things that they're already doing.
My comment about WASC compliance isn't just that you got to satisfy WASC. You've got to, as an instructor, be able to see what the student is achieving and have a way of knowing it. So it's got to say, you know, doing 100 push-ups a day is not progress. But you need to frame it in such a way that it describes an aspirational goal or because you got to set goals for the students. If they finish the year with exactly the same skill and ability they had when they started, you really didn't give them a year's worth of growth in a year's worth of time, and that's not fair to them, even if you signed the waiver.
Right.
Ben's gonna talk. Got a comment.
Look at all the power I get if I fill out a blue card.
Everybody's, yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to speak, but I just quickly wanted to add that just from a PE teacher standpoint, I see the independent study as a big step in the right direction, especially if it were to replace the current waiver that we have. Like Dennis was kind of talking about, that allowing students to muddying the waters between sports and physical education. If I coach the boys soccer team at Marin, I probably address about 2 of like the 24 standards that we're supposed to teach in our curriculum. So this, I think, is a huge step towards at least the 5 categories of standards that we have in PE2. And it may be more work for students. They may see it as that way. But I think, for me, I feel like I'm giving them a better education. And I do think there's some accountability built in. I don't think this is 100% done. But just as an English teacher should be able to spot some plagiarism on an English paper, I think as PE professionals, we should be able to spot, especially with these video analysis and reflections and things that they're doing, we should be able to spot some students that aren't actually going through this process or aren't actually doing these activities. So a little bit of faith, I guess, is what I'm asking for, but I do agree that we do still have some more work to do on this. That's just all I wanted to add. Yeah.
Thank you. What do you do when a student is playing one sport? Are they going to have to do this independent study for that semester, or?
We did talk about that a little bit, yeah.
So we've talked about, this is kind of, when we designed it, we did a course A and a course B. So they could take the same course, basically 2 semesters of it. And if they played sports, and then we talked about having like 2 different assignments. So like the portfolio of the season, which is like preseason goals, review of the season, that could be done even if you played, like if you're a soccer player and you played soccer your sophomore year and your junior, you should have new goals for that next season. So that part would still be applicable. I think this skill related fitness, that would be the same. We'd have to kind of have like a 2A and a 2B. We've done that kind of under number 3 and number 4. So like a research assignment, one was like the history of the sport you're playing, and the other one was the role of that sports, what that sport plays in the society as a whole, right? And so if you play 2 seasons of soccer, the first semester you would write, if you took it as one semester, you would say, I'm going to write about the history of soccer, and then the second time you played it, you would write about soccer's role in society and the world as a whole. So we've kind of built in that even if you played the same sport, ideally you'd have, as an athletic director, I hope that all of our kids play multiple sports. And so that most kids, I feel like they would get that kind of 2 different things. So they're looking at a greater thing. But this course with having an A and a B option would provide a kid, if they are a single sport athlete, to get that over 2 things.
Okay. Trustee Nell.
So I want to be, so what I'm hearing from the PE department and the athletic director is they want the waiver idea is gone and replaced by they take this course, whether they're a district athlete or an outside athlete. Is that? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. So we won't be giving students waivers anymore. We'll be offering them this course. Is that right? Help me understand step by step.
That's a decision you guys would have to make. That's one option.
So that's one option.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Okay. So, and I heard what President Butler, said at the beginning, and we'll get there. So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's also
it could completely replace it. It could be offered just for people who are playing outside sports, and so our students could still do a waiver. It could also give a student an option. So currently, if a kid gets waivered from PE, they have to take another elective somewhere else. So this would provide a kid to be able to get units, and that would free up other spots in their schedule also. So it could just be a student could do a waiver, in which then their credits get routed somewhere else, or a student could do this for an MCAL sport. Right, so they would have that option to say, I either want to take it as a waiver or I want to take it as a credit. So it gives kind of the student and the counselor a choice to say what's best for that student, what route do we want to go.
Yeah, I think we definitely wanted that stacked option so a student could decide if this was a way that they wanted to get those PE credits.
Well, I think that's great. I mean, thanks for explaining it that way, because I was on it's an either or thing. So at this point, that sounds like something I could support.
Can I add on to that?
Sure.
So if they take it as a waiver, I'm not understanding. If they take it as a waiver, that means they don't get PE credit?
Correct. They get. So what they do is they basically, on a transcript, it will say you need 20 PE credits to graduate, right? So all of our students take their first year of PE. So after they're done freshman year, it says they've taken 10, they have 10 left. When they fill out a waiver, they basically take 5 out of the 5 left, and they move it somewhere else.
Right.
So they put it down as an elective. So it's an additional, we're putting
Right.
more coursework on the students, that if they did this course, they're essentially doing those 5 assignments, that independent study portion, instead of taking an entire another course somewhere else.
Okay. So taking this would clear up that other 10 units.
Yes, so they're
Correct.
able to bank those 10
Oh, yeah.
credits, and then that helps a kid who's
Okay.
trying to get A through Gs or wants.
That helps, because I didn't know that coming into reading this. I didn't get that out of that, so that helps, okay.
So it is a little bit more work for a student, and
Yeah.
a student at first would say, but all I had to do was fill out a paper. But then the other argument is, well, you also don't have to take an entire semester-long course to graduate.
To free up to take
It
something
frees- it-
else.
right, it
That's a
clears
huge
something out.
addition for me. That's a wow, so, okay.
And we'll leave that to student choice.
Yeah.
Okay, now what do we do about the non-district sports student? Because what do we do about them? Because I saw the course, taking this course as some way of us having some assurance that they were getting some physical education, regardless of what they were doing out, whether pizza making, competition or something. So at least we know they're taking this course, even if they're taking pizza making outside the district. So what about those two? So how are we going to offer them a choice too, or is this mandatory they got to take this course?
So I think because of the way that the waivers are set up is that most of the waivers through California Ed Code are set up for interscholastic sports. And so what we're trying to find was a way for students who aren't doing interscholastic governed sports. So basically the independent study would do that. So it is a little more work, but a student doing this course is actually getting credit as opposed to a kid doing a waiver. So you are asking them to do a little bit more work, but you're also rewarding them with the high school credit. And I think kind of what you're saying is I think that there are mechanisms in independent study programs where there's, like I said, there's an application process and kind of a vetting process. And as this unfolds, we're going to know that if a kid's at Novato Gymnastics, eventually those relationships are going to be built, and we're going to understand who their teachers are and who they aren't. And that when things come up that are red flags, hopefully the PE teacher in charge is able to kind of recognize those as they develop. And okay, I've never heard of this person before. We need to do some research and make sure that it's an actual sport and they're competing at a high level and they're not just going to whatever, you know what I mean? Right. And so, yeah, like I said, I think the policy, in my opinion, I don't think we need that, but approving the course or some
Well, we need a
iteration.
policy. We need a policy.
All right,
We need some policy.
so
We can't
that's-
eliminate this policy completely. This is.
Well, no, I'm
Yeah, just
right,
want to make
but
sure we understand.
But no, I'm saying, but the new policy.
The new policy.
I don't think is, in my opinion,
Amy,
I
are
don't.
you in agreement with that, or?
I disagree. I think it creates the mechanism. I think Dennis's concerns about, the quality control and the specificity are going to be embedded in the course. And so I think what this is it opens the doorway and a mechanism for us. And I think the concerns that he have aren't appropriate to have in the board policy, but rather in the course itself. So.
So is that, because I sort of tend to agree with that the board policy allows it, but then it's the administrative rules and regulations and the course outline itself are going to be where we're going to put the controls in. So that's why I'm trying to understand why you don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I just think that anytime because I've written other course descriptions also, and they've never got board policy to allow a course to be written. I don't believe, and maybe Chris can speak to that too, I don't think you have to have board policy to have an approved course.
My observation here is that the difference in this, I actually get what you're saying now. I think it's the whole idea that it's a independent study program. That's how I'm figuring it is different, giving that ability to have independent study, like a whole whatever you make it into. So
Right.
Yeah.
that's
The board-
what I see
Yeah.
this is doing.
Right, but
because you've got the waiver element, like the different choices of what you can do. And that this is just a way that you implementing that element of being able to do that kind of a program however you decide to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we need to keep it in the policy.
So if I could.
Yes.
So when I look back to the original problem that we were trying to address here, the original problem that we were trying to address here was that we had a stack of waivers from people on the mountain bike team, people doing gymnastics, people doing rowing, and we didn't really have a mechanism for approving a waiver for those students. And so that was the original challenge that we faced when we started doing this work, was how do we come together and find a way to approve these athletes who are out there, they're working hard, they're in a structured, organized environment, they're putting in X number of hours. Why aren't we treating them the same as we're treating kids who are in an MCAL sport? So that was the original problem that we were trying to solve. And that problem has morphed, and that happens sometimes. And now we're talking about a couple of different things. Now we're talking about does our waiver as it currently exists, does that still work for us? Should we have parity between the students who are varsity athletes and the students who are competing outside of our organization? And how should we codify that in board policy or administrative regulation? So right now we're in a place where we still have the original problem to solve. We still have a stack of waivers from kids who are doing this hard work. And the question for me at this time that I think and I'll ask Amy a question in a minute, is does including this new policy allow us to address the problem that we're trying to address with these kids that have been waiting on us for a long time to approve or disapprove that waiver? And if it does, then it makes sense to me for us to move forward with this policy, with the acknowledgement that we still have some other work to do around those other topics, but clearly based on the conversation that we've had tonight, we're not quite ready to finalize that. So I would say, Amy, do you believe that by approving this policy as written tonight, it helps us to address the initial problem that we were trying to solve?
Yes, so if you do adopt this policy, I'll be able to write letters to those parents whose files are on my desk and let them know that we have an option for them, that in the next upcoming school year that they will have the opportunity to take an independent study PE course, and then we can work with counselors as they're working through the schedules to make sure that we have everything ready for the fall. So that's a yes for me.
So I think my question was to you is, could we offer an independent study PE course without having a board policy that says we can offer it? That makes sense.
I think
the board policy as written is super vague, and it doesn't say it has to be a second year
I
PE.
I would want it specified.
I think what I'm hearing from the board is a lot of them have a lot of experience dealing with challenges like this in the community. And what I'm hearing is we need to have something in our policy that says if you're an athlete competing outside of our organization, there's a process. And that process is embedded in our board policies, and so that's why it's important. I don't think anybody on the board is saying we need to have a policy to create a course offering.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just, this is a level of protection for us. When somebody comes to the district office and says, hey, I need to see the policy, and that happens weekly, we can go to the policy and we can say, here it is.
Could we add to both of these policies then that it's can offer full through a independent study physical education program as their second year of high school PE? Because, right, well, but I'm saying, if they're taking PE, my fear again is that if a student comes in and says, I don't want to take freshman PE and I want to do this, the board policy is going to say, yes, they can.
So education code requires that freshman English is, if we want to explicitly put that in there, but it would be a violation of ed code to waive a freshman PE course.
But they wouldn't be waiving,
for our purposes,
they wouldn't be waiving PE.
Good to have it clear. We deal with people who want to cloud the issue for 100 reasons because they want what they want.
Right. So I would feel comfortable if we wanted to add to the end of both of those as a second year high school PE.
More clarification? Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even though in the policy it does state the ed code, but that's fine. Yep. Just more clarification.
Yep.
Okay, I want to go down the line. So Trustee Aguila, what do you comment?
Yeah, I just have a question.
What do you like, or what do you?
I think, I feel better now that you've clarified some of the things and that we can add more. I think the more we add, as long as it's clear. And still, what do we do about, it's still not clear to me as far as, to me when I read this, it's more of a, it reads more as a site by site. So if we could still address that, and I'm okay with if it treats differently for both high schools, because I do believe in equity, but in this case, I think that it should be more of similar. It should be similar.
I think my advice to the board at this juncture is to go ahead and create the mechanism, and we'll spend some time really refining that. We can bring back a presentation to the board to answer a lot of these questions to your satisfaction. But if we move forward creating the mechanism, then we can circle back and bring that back to the board to answer how we've landed on our solutions.
And then we talked about special ed. But so would you add to that?
I think that, like she was saying earlier, those are case by case setup that counselors and the IEP teams would have to have on a case by case situation.
But we can make that explicit in the syllabus.
Yeah,
no problem.
please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Trustee Cooper, anything to add?
No, I'm in support of
So you're in
this.
support of that? Okay.
With the stipulation of making it a second year.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's amended, because I'm afraid if it's not put out there, I just want to make sure.
Sure. Okay, Trustee Gasson?
So I'm fine with this. My only concern is that statement that you just made. I was trying to read the policy really fast. So my only statement would be a general statement of when you incorporate something like that, you need to make sure that there's not an opening somewhere else. So I was trying to figure out if you're specifying it here and it's somewhere else needs to be that requirement. Like, I don't know if this regional, I can't read this fast enough, but my point is that someone can pick that up. Well, you said here this was a requirement, but you didn't say it here. So as long as there's consistency, if that makes sense, because I don't want it to be that you omit it somewhere where else it applies that requirement.
And we modeled this language off of others in the state, so we feel comfortable with it, but it's something we'll continue to monitor. Absolutely.
If you add that element, because I'm the kind of person that I just did it on a contract. It's that it was in a certain area, but it wasn't somewhere else. So I said, so it only applies, that phrase only applies to here and not over here. So again, I didn't read this, but if you can keep that in context of.
Trustee Nell?
I support the policy with these amending it to be a little more specific about what years. I think it's only more information, so that'll give you the mechanism. I think this is a good, says right on here, rough draft. The concept, now that I had it explained and understood, I think it needs to, I think we need to do it and see how it goes, quite frankly. I don't know how else you're going to do this except for just to begin the process. And I trust you guys to, to do it to the best of your ability, and whatever issues are beyond your control, we'll see if we can prevent that from happening next time, right? So, good work on this local issue that we have to resolve amongst ourselves, and you're to be commended for solving this issue. For, as Assistant Superintendent Koska said, that we have community members out there that are treated as separate class citizens due to this particular issue. So if there's a way we can do it and still maintain our fiduciary responsibility and no one takes advantage of us, then I'm willing to give it a shot. So I support it.
Trustee Miller?
Good to go. This
Okay.
has been a good conversation. Let's go for a year and see what happens. Come back in a year with.
Okay, so
what you
just to
learned.
be clear, we're going to make a motion for the policy, and we have the few revisions.
Right. So the revisions be a second, I just want to clarify that it's a second year
You're on
high
tape,
school,
so we got it.
And that the independent study is for a sport not offered at the school, for an outside sport, something that we don't, that way a soccer
Not
player,
offered at the school.
It's not offered at
Yeah.
the school. I think that needs to be in that
can't-
in number 5.
That's right.
That number 5 also, that should be a part of that as
Okay.
well.
So
That's important.
yeah, Dennis,
Yeah.
can I get your email address before you walk out here tonight? Thanks.
Sure.
And
So moved.
I'm happy with the waiver piece. That really changed it for me. That they have an option to do the waiver and not get, they get the credit changes. And then if they do the course, they get the full credit.
Yeah.
I like that. And then we give the course to outside sport. That's perfect. I'm good to go.
So I so move.
I think that's, again, that's going to be
That's
a separate issue, and it's going to have to be the IEP team and the counselors
So-
would make those work, and we're doing that already with kids.
We're approving the policy, but we're not doing this? This is not part of it.
No, that's simply a
Wanna make
model
sure
of
we're
where
clear.
we're
Yeah,
headed.
where we're headed.
We know we have
Gonna come back
refinement
the
to
board,
do.
There's
So,
refinement.
yeah.
Okay, so we had a first by trustee Millerick with revisions, okay? And a second by trustee Gasson. All those in favor to approve board policy 6142.7, 601 absent.
And we'll see this a year from now and if there's anything to learn.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys. Thank you very much for your work on, thank you, Michelle, for doing this. Okay. Mike, you're always our last one, almost the last one.
I think Sally mixed it up and put Mr. Koski in between my two things.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll go quickly. Good evening, trustees. Here tonight to seek approval, board approval for resolution 25-2018-19. You made me skip for a second. Which finds Robert A. Bothman Construction as a best value contractor, and also looking for approval of an award of a leaseback contract to Bothman for the Novato High School Athletic Field Complex project. Much like we did with the other high school projects on the leaseback mechanism, we followed our process that that was board approved. We had two firms that were pre-qualified for this project. We pulled both of them in for the interview, and we conducted our point system, and it came out that Bothman was the best value contractor for this particular project. And as usual, we had our interview panel consisted of district staff, Greystone West, and the school site staff. So we had a pretty good group to make a decision. And if board approved tonight we're seeking to award a $75,000 contract, which covers pre-construction services, to allow the contractor to go out and get his pricing, in which case we will come back to you at a future board meeting with the pricing for approval before we award the work, or the construction work starts. So again, staff recommends approving the resolution to Robert A. Bothman Construction as a best value contractor, and also approving award of a leaseback agreement to Robert A. Bothman for the Novato High School Athletic Fields Complex leaseback contract. That's a mouthful. Any questions? Anybody for questions?
Well, I honestly just cannot remember, but has Bothman done work for us before?
Bothman did both high school fields originally when they converted them from grass to turf. They also just did the San Rafael project and the Terra Linda project and about 50 other projects.
Okay, so that was the support information I was looking for, so I'm prepared to move.
Okay. First by trustee Nell, second by trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 601 absent.
Thank you.
All right. Second to last item, oh, actually we have some consent. Yeah, we have one consent item still to go.
I do want to point out that tonight's one of the rare nights that you get to look at me more than you get to look at Yancey. So I think that's probably a positive thing. All for all, yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, at the end of the night, I got to bring hope forward, a difficult item. This is the resolution number 26 for 2018-19 to reduce or eliminate the number of classified staff members due to a lack of work or a lack of funds. This is coming about as a result of the decisions made last week, or at our last board meeting, the difficult conversations around reducing our school budget by $1.8 million. So along with that came a reduction of certain classifications, and when we do that, we need to bring a resolution forward. These are the classified positions that were decided to be eliminated. I will walk through the different positions and talk with you about which positions we anticipate to be vacant and which positions we anticipate to be occupied. On the resolution, you'll see there is a custodian 1 position. We have one currently vacant custodian 1 position. The second custodian 1 position, we have a retirement that will take effect June 30, so that position will be vacant on July 1st when the layoff would begin. We have the print shop mailroom technician. That is a position that is currently occupied, occupied by a great employee who works hard every day. We're very appreciative of her and her work. It's a very difficult personal decision for all of us, but it was a decision that we needed to make. With the technology support technician 2, that is a position that is currently occupied. We believe that there's opportunities with future retirement in the technology department that by the time we get there, this position may not be occupied, but it's not a known thing for certain. We'll have to see how that plays out through the interview process. We have the Fans Lead 2 position. That is a currently vacant position. We also have the Fans Lead 3, elementary and secondary. That is a currently vacant position. We have the instructional assistant position. That's a half-time position that is currently occupied by a very veteran staff member who's been through a number of layoffs with us and is going through this again. And then finally, we have a very part-time reduction of an accounting technician 2. This is an employee that we hired into a 1.0 position. She declared that she would prefer it to be a 0.8. We worked out an agreement with CSEA for it to be a 0.8. So that 0.2 is currently vacant. Nobody will be directly affected by that. So later this week, we will be meeting with CSEA and negotiating the effects of the layoff. That's something that we need to do our best to mitigate the effects of this on other members and on the district. So with all of that being said, we recommend approval of Resolution 26 for 2018-19 to reduce and or eliminate the number of classified employees due to lack of work and or lack of funds.
All right, Trustee Aguila?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry that I'm sorry that we have to do this. These are important positions and important people that have worked here for many years and done a great job. So I do feel bad about that as well. Having said that, I know this is important and we need to do now. We need to start cutting now before we have to cut even more in the future. So I make a motion to the first motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So I have a first by Trustee Aguila and a second by Trustee Millerick, and I echo your sentiments as well. This is not easy for this board. We know this affects lives of our employees, the ones that positions that aren't vacant, and we appreciate your commitment to this district, and especially those that have been here a long time. So all those in favor to approve this reduction and or eliminate the number of classified employees due to lack of work and or lack of funds, this resolution. 6-0, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Mike's back up again. And this is regarding Linwood, Novato High, and San Jose. Yeah.
Correct. So again, good evening, seeking board approval of deferred maintenance roof repair projects at Novato High School and Linwood High School, and approval to begin public bidding for roof repair replacement project at 3 sites. And this probably sounds more confusing than it needs to be, but just a refresher, back in May of 2017, the board approved the deferred maintenance project, which is about a $12 million lump sum project that included a variety of maintenance projects throughout all our school sites, one of which was the San Ramon roof, which we did. It was our worst conditioned roof. Other roofs that were in there were the San Jose Middle School roof and the San Marin High School roof. Unfortunately, since then, we've had some other deterioration in roofs at other school sites, namely the 4 buildings at Novato High School and some at Linwood Skylights as well. So seeking a board approval to add the buildings at Novato High and the Linwood Skylights to the deferred maintenance project, so we can use that deferred maintenance bond money to fix those. And in addition, the San Jose project, or San Jose roof, which is already in the deferred maintenance program, looking just for permission to go out to bid for that one in addition to the other 2. Long-winded way to say.
Okay. Trustee Cooper?
So, thanks, Mike. Sorry, it's the end of the evening for you. Very late. So you're going to put this out to bid, and then where did these estimates come from, the cost estimates?
Previous board, you approved us to go to Skyline Engineering, excuse me, to do design estimates and design packaging for these roofs, which they did, and that's where these estimates came from.
So $80,000. So if we approve this tonight, you're going to put it out to bid, and then what? Will you come back to us, or how does that work? You're not going to go over the 80,000?
Correct. We'd only come back if the bids came in
it were
high,
over those?
and we would come back to ask for award.
Okay.
We'd come back to ask for award anyway. I'm sorry. We come back to get
Right.
permission to award.
I just didn't
regardless
see any of
price.
that in here, so, okay, that's fine. Maybe it's late.
Trustee Nell. Oh, did you have any more, Tom? Did you have
No,
any?
I'd move.
Oh, you're
on it.
moving, okay.
I second.
Trustee Nell?
I had a question about the Gordon Gym. Are we going to do anything different this time? Because we did the Gordon Gym roof 10 years ago.
I think we did parts of the Gordon Gym roof 10 years ago.
Parts? No, it was the whole thing.
It's a very interesting roof. I probably would not recommend building one like that in the current stage. But so it has a center vent piece on top that we think is leaking, and it also has two types of roof. It has the shingles, which you can see from the parking lot, and then it has a built-up roof next to that before you get to the middle, which has various patches that have failed over time. So we're going to replace the whole thing to start over so that the roof is all the same age, and we're going to replace the ridge vent equipment that's failed.
So it sounds like we are going to do something different this time. Last time we were
Band-Aided it to what we thought was a problem. We're just going to fix the whole roof.
Do you have, as a result of the last time we did this roof, we removed the sound cushioning
on the inside.
on the inside, and we never put it back.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
We
I could have predicted
that in
you'd
here?
bring that up.
The intention was not to have, or that wasn't part of this particular project. We could obviously look at that if that is a desire of the board. But we're strictly trying to stop roofs from leaking at this point.
That would be the priority. So I guess we'll have to talk the boosters or somebody into the sound. But it's just too bad that when the first time we did it, we removed it without a plan to replace it. So, all right, I'll support it.
Okay, so I have a first by Trustee Cooper and a second by Trustee Aguila. All those in favor?
Got a comment first.
Oh, comment?
Yeah. I would like to have you do a history on the roof replacements at Novato. My memory is we replaced the roof at Novato because we didn't properly tear it off, and we put a metal roof on, and the skateboarders got on it. We put it on in the cold, and it leaked. Then this roof has been replaced multiple times. I mean, periodically you have bad luck in a construction program, but I would like to see a timeline history for the roofs at Novato. I believe we are reasonably subject to severe criticism for the way we've managed that particular project in this district, and I'd like to see it in writing. And with that, I'll support this, but this is $1.4 million. It's going right after projects that look to me we should have been able to get another 20 years out of, and it keeps turning around. And I would like to talk to you offline about the San Ramon, to how I understand that went well, but let's not talk about it tonight. So I'll support this. This is aggravating.
Trustee Cooper?
Just a quick question. This is the total tear-off, right? You're going all the way down to bare.
Yes, yes. All of these.
Because that may have been the problem before. We just put one on top of another bad one.
The issue is before. We got to do it right for the first time.
Okay.
So Trustee Miller, you're directing staff to do an additional work item here, and I just want to make sure the board is in agreement with that. And you know,
it's I want a spreadsheet that shows where we spent the money over the last 20 years. Yes, I do. And if the board doesn't want to know where the hell the money went, that's fine.
Trustee Miller, we can't one board giving direction, one board member. We've got to have
information to make decisions.
Okay,
so
I understand
I will
that.
either ask him in his office or I'll ask him here at the board table.
Is the rest of the board okay with that?
I think it's up to staff to determine how that information comes forward, but I am interested in what the difference is because, as previously stated, and I agree with Trustee Millrick, that we should not have to be replacing these roofs that are only 10 years old. That means we screwed up the first time.
Yeah.
And I think we need to learn from that. And publicly, maybe we need to learn from that. So we'll hold, unfortunately, individuals like yourself more accountable this time.
Understand?
All right, thanks.
Maybe the consultant we use on that could shed some light on some forensic work.
Yes, I'll bring back staff report with all this.
And I do want to clarify that Mr. Willard was not here 10 years
Or
ago.
in the weekly.
Yeah, I was just going to say
Sorry.
that. Yeah, you can
However
weekly
you
update.
prefer.
You don't want to be here too much.
It's
Okay,
fun
Trustee
talking at
Gasson.
11 or 10:45 a minute.
So just what I kind of got out of this then, so this is something I believe in, is that when we are doing these repairs or projects and stuff, that we're not just, we look at the cost to just fix it because it needs to be fixed, but look at a bigger scope. Like, I know it costs more money, but can we do this better so that we don't end up here? So just in the context of this whole discussion, that I think that's just something to learn with all these things, projects that we're going on.
We work hand in hand with maintenance, and this corresponds to the most work orders for roof leaks, and that's why we're attacking the highest priority. Right.
Okay, first by Trustee Cooper and a second by Trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent. We have one consent item, 15S. This is the Colby Technologies.
I do have answers to your questions if you'd like me to. I can address those now if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it would be great. Yep. Let's.
I can. I thought we'd need to get more information from the contractor, but was able to get answers to your specific questions if you'd like to do them now, or I could come back and.
No, I would love for you to address it now.
Yeah.
Trustee Getson, do you want to ask your questions, or want me to just go down the list and answer? Okay. So I had a list of questions concerning the Colby Technologies request for, I just took my place mark out. Not that I had 14 items this week, but getting there. Okay. I'm whining. No, I'm whining. So looking, approve purchase of accountability software. It's a specific software from Colby Technologies. That's project and financial management software for the $222 million Measure G bond program. And a couple questions that came up. So reference was made to historical data being an input, being an additional cost. The contract that you have does have some, we can use their labor force at $100 an hour to help enter data, but we plan on using the last 2 years of data, which is not included in this. Staff intends to input that because it's not that much. Reference is made to the software annual software fee being allowable under the bond program language, but does not state if the other fees can be too. Actually, we're only asking for the one program, the accountability software, which is strictly the financial and program management piece. We did get a quote for a lot of other pieces. Or did I misinterpret the question?
You got it semi-right. So there's two. There's it says for the actual software services fee, that is an acceptable expense. It did not specify, this is where I go to where I hire the agreements. It does not say that for the implementation, the $35,000.
So the startup costs.
So is that also, I'm sure that.
Yes, I can confirm that it has an allowable expenditures under Proposition 39 and our specific bond language, so both. All inclusive, both are allowable as administrative expenses under Prop 39 and the bond language.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. He's catching up, Chris. He's getting more FaceTime here. Okay, so what are the anticipated travel and lodging expenses? The company is in Southern California. There's some interest to know that they don't have a carte blanche ticket to go stay at, fly first class and stay at the fanciest hotels. The per diem rate is an expense that's ours, and we use the standard district per diem rates as a baseline to tell them what we consider an acceptable per diem rate. So no first class this time. Is this type of program typical for this type of a bond program? Since 2002, Colby Technologies has over 60 school districts as customers, and they use this software and additional software that they also offer. I didn't find a specific list, but I can get that. I wasn't able to get that today, but I know there's a lot of districts, and I know Yancey had experience when he was down at the Larkspur Palo Alto School District. So a lot of school districts, and we've talked to a few that think it's a really good program. Upon researching the company, it appears they have a lot of different software. Specifically, one was to streamline the bidding process. Does the software proposed do both, or is it a different module? We're asking for the accountability piece, which is strictly the financial program management piece. The one you were talking about is, I think, called quality bid, which helps quality bidders, which addresses the CUPCA program requirements in the state. It is a great program. We just didn't have the money at this time to use that one. So yes, they did. The quote did include other bids on programs we are not intending to use at this time.
I guess it wasn't intended to be in this forum when I was asking all these questions, so I apologize. But I think the reason I was asking all these questions is just knowing that we've asked the questions and that we don't get, we've decided we want to add this on because it
Sure.
And one of the things is the archival, like being able to go back in.
Right.
And it's nothing significant, but I just start,
First question, just to give you some quick background, we had these folks come out and pitch along with some other companies last year. So we were looking in this over a year ago, and at the time, the bond program wasn't very robust, wasn't too busy, and we were able to handle it. We're using an Excel spreadsheet. At the time, it had probably 3 tabs, and it was very easy. I don't want to tell you how crazy that is now. So, but during the process, one of the first questions we always ask the companies is, say you go out of business tomorrow, how do we get our data? Because that's a very big concern for us, because we've realized there's a lot of data that we're having a hard time retaining. So that's one of our first priorities is how do we get what we paid for and keep it to retain it? And that's in here. It is, of course, a slight cost, but there is an exit strategy and also archival abilities as well.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Okay, I appreciate your taking the time to respond to my questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad we got that clarified, and thank you for your keen eye on that. Appreciate that. All right, so this is a discussion action item. You want to move? Okay. Trustee Gasson is a first. Trustee Nell is a second. All those in favor to approve the purchase of accountability software from Colby Technologies? 6-0, 1 absent.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
For the board, our next board meeting is April 16th at 6 p.m. Open session right here. There won't be a closed session. It's 6 p.m. April 16th. We approved that board meeting on the consent. And then April 23rd is our next regular scheduled board meeting with the open session beginning at 7 p.m., closed session at 6 o'clock. And next week is spring break, so meeting's adjourned.